Hey guys, Tommy Boshers with Detroit Muscle. One of my favorite builds to ever come out of this shop would have to be our '69 Dodge Charger that we've named Hard Charger. Now that car ended up to be one spectacular piece, and check out the full build. You're watching Power Nation. We've been building cars on this show and its predecessor for over 10 years now. And year after year, one of the most iconic cars ever made has eluded us, but no more. We finally tracked one down that we're happy with, that's in good enough shape, and the price is right on it. Yep, a 1969 Dodge Charger.
This is my '69 Charger I've had for 20 years, and I've been driving it for 20 years and restoring on it for 20 years, and I really like the car.
According to the VIN number, this car originally had a 383 with a 2-barrel. Now, according to the owner, it was an automatic, but it's been switched over to a 4-speed, and under the hood is a big block.
We're going to take the whole car for a test spin to see what the first impression is. Now, you can definitely tell that the carburetor's kind of gummed up and it's been sitting for a long time. So we're going to have to take that into consideration.
You can see my face was sad, couldn't you, Chief? Well, I've had this car a long time, and I felt that, I just wanted to move on.
Well, we've got our Charger back in the shop, and it's time to start working on it. We've got some really big plans.
Yeah, we're going to do something a little bit different with this car than like the other ones that we've done in the past. Now, normally we tear them all the way down and then build them all the way back up to the finish line, if you know what I mean. But this particular car here, it's a running and driving vehicle, and we're going to try to keep it that way through most of the build. All right, guys, the first thing we're going to do today is address the brakes on our old Charger here. Now, we don't want to spend a whole lot of money because later down the road, we're going to swap this stuff out. But we do want to make sure that we're riding around in a safe car.
We got a whole bunch of OE parts like hardware kit, brake shoes, a master cylinder, and even hoses and wheel cylinders. Now, normally we wouldn't order a whole bunch of parts not knowing what we needed, but since this stuff is so affordable, we went ahead and got everything, just use what we need.
The first thing we'll do is disconnect the hose from the brake lines. Then we can unscrew it from the backing plate on the brake. Then start unbolting the brake cylinder itself. Prying this thing out would be easier if the shoes were off. Since the shoes are good, doing it like this will save us a bit of work.
While the drum is off, we're going to re-grease this bearing, as well as replace this old seal. We'll use some WD-40 Specialist multi-purpose grease to do the job. And if you look closely, you can see that old grease is being shoved out when we pack in the good stuff. We'll also dig out the excess grease that's down inside the hub. Then replace that freshly packed bearing. With our new seal in place, we're in business.
Next up, we can attach our new brake hose to the factory lines. you want to see some form of a drag, but not a whole lot. That's kind of the way that one's at.
Now we finished doing all of our brakes underneath and installed that new master cylinder, topped off the fluid and got the brakes bled. Now it's time to move on to under the hood. Now while Tommy's doing the tune-up, I'm gonna try to figure out what exact engine this is. We were told it was a 440 out of a 71, but who knows? We know there's a stamping under here where this coil is, so we're just gonna take this bolt out, move it to the side and see if we can see it. Well, we can see here that it is a 440, and the H means that it was built in 72.
Well, I got all the plugs out on this side, and I tell you, it's a pretty good idea that we went ahead and swapped them out. By the look of these old things, they're definitely practically fuel fouled, but this is a pretty common problem. A tune-up on this thing will definitely wake it up. To get our Mopar dialed in, we went to rockauto.com and got us a few pieces. We got the standard tune-up pieces and a set of motor mounts to help keep that engine put. When inspecting your cap, you want to look at the contacts in here and see if you see anything burn up or corroded. These are in bad shape and the cap needs replaced.
Now we can get our new plug wires installed on this old 440. We'll also go ahead and swap in that new fuel filter, then head under the engine.
With this screw jack, I'm going to put a little pressure on the motor to see what the mount does. And it pretty much just gives way right off the bat. So that mount is bad. So we're going to crank it up pretty good. We're going to take out this bolt and see if we can wiggle most of that mount out. Once we get the new mount set in place, we can get her bolted in. And we've just solved our problem of not being able to do any burnouts.
Well, we've got a few more things that we want to do to our Charger before it hits the road, and while we have it here on the lift. We're going to do belts and upper and lower radiator hoses that we got from rockauto.com. And since there's a little leak in the radiator, we've got some bars leak, stop leak to address that. And we're not going to do all of this without changing the oil, so we've got some Royal Purple high mileage synthetic oil and new filter.
I don't know if you know or not, but this old Mopar's running a little better than whenever we took it for a test bed.
Yeah, I noticed.
Now we're just riding some 2-lane roads, headed southbound, trying to go see a good friend of ours.
Yeah, a buddy of ours has a museum down in Alexander City, Alabama, and it's mostly Mopars, so it'd be ideal to take a look at those cars. And especially Vinny's got going on is called Mopars at the Museum. I think that's the perfect place for us to take this thing.
Whether you're a Mopar fan or not, attending a show at the Welding Muscle Car Museum will have you grinning like a kid in a candy shop. Folks from all around have brought their rides to show off and share this weekend. Road runners, Superbirds, rare Cudas, Dusters, and everything in between.
Tim Welburn is a true enthusiast and a Chrysler connoisseur, but there's one thing you won't find at this show.
There'll never be a judged car on a Welburn event because it's just one of those things that you make one person happy and 3 unhappy. And so I believe in talking about our cars and the history and why we have them, and that's what we do here.
I think you need to have it worked on before you bring it back to another show.
Well, that just might be the best advice that we received all day. We found a ton of inspiration at this show.
So much that we can't wait to get back to the shop and get busy.
Now, while we were down there in LA, Lower Alabama, we saw some telltale signs that this thing looks like it had some rust in it. And then there's another one back here on the back toward the lip. The next thing, I'm going to use a very complex tool. A piece of US currency, tap on the panel. Now, up here, sounds like metal. As you get over here, sounds a little bit like plastic. Either way, a repair needs to be made for the type of car that we're putting together. So we're going to dig it out and see what we're working with. I'm going to take this grinder and run right across the top of those little bumps, and let's see what's in there. You can see there's some rust and corrosion under the filler here. Well, let's go ahead and strip the rest of this panel and see what we're working with. We're going to take this a little at a time because we don't know yet just how extensive the sins are on this panel. It's looking like this particular piece of real estate is going to need a lot of help. With as thick as this mud is, you're really not supposed to go over 1/8 inch most of the time, and we're way past that. Well, this old car's got quite a bit of filler in it down here, so we're going to have to change our plan of attack and strap on one of these masks. The further I go with my grinder, the more filler I find on this thing. Looks like the whole panel has been mudded up. But before I can say we can patch from here down, I actually need to strip more of this quarter to make sure that the repair doesn't need to go further uphill. After quite a bit of archaeology here, this old car needs a skin put on it. I'm done. Now, after getting it all stripped down, we noticed that this car's had a couple of primitive repairs done to it. And down here on the bottom, wherever they welded it in, they warped the heck out of the panel and then took a hammer and beat it all in, trying to make it better. Well, this is a perfect example of what I've said in the past. It may be boogered up and look broken, but it ain't plumb broken till you can't fix it no more.
And this is how we're gonna fix it. We went to Stevens Performance because they're right up the road and they've got the good stuff. This quarter skin came from Auto Metal Direct. It's OE gauge steel, and like their other panels, comes with their reliable E-coat. Since we're gonna be slinging a lot of welding sparks, we gotta go ahead and pull the gas tank. No need to take the risk of leaving it in. There's also a few things that are in the way and need to come off, like the bumper, marker light, and this quarter extension.
We're pretty much ready to start throwing some sparks, and the first incision we're gonna make is right here on the top side of the quarter panel, about 3/16 up. And then we're gonna come back with that big old grinder and whack off the majority of this quarter to get it out of the way, and then follow up with some drill bits and that kind of thing to get the rest of it off. That way we can cover quite a bit of ground pretty quickly. First things first, gotta make some marks. Now this mark down through here doesn't have to be very accurate, but we'll just go ahead and mark it.
Some welding paper is a good idea to protect your glass from all of those cutting and welding sparks. Now we can bust out the cutting wheel and start getting this quarter off.
We got a little spot right here where they managed to weld the outer skin to the inner one, so I gotta cut that free. And when you pull the panel off, don't let your grinder cord get caught on its way down. Ah! Now we got most of that quarter out of the way. Now we got to work on getting the rest of it moved away as well. Now I'm going to use this grinder here to do a little massaging here on the back so that we can highlight those spot welds. Then we'll get after it with a drill. Time to get started. Well, it looks like we got a spot weld here. Probably one there, right there, right there, and let's see there, possibly there too. I'll use the body saw to get rid of this side piece at the back of the quarter. It's going away anyhow, and with it gone, the remaining piece will be easier to remove. Now we can just bust out the spot weld driller and get busy on this tail piece. You can do this with a drill too, but it takes a little more patience. Well, you guys got to see the technique that I've got to apply all the way down, forward, around the fender well, and up to the door. So, it's time to get busy. We've made some pretty good progress prepping for that new quarter skin. Whenever I moved down here at the bottom of the quarter panel, I noticed someone has done screwed up the inner structure as well. It's got quite a bit of rust right in through here, so that means this piece is gonna have to be replaced as well.
This old coating has to be removed to get to the metal, and the air hammer will help get that done. Then it's more quality time with the body saw. If you're gonna be doing much panel work, one of these saws like this one from Matco is just about the handiest thing you could have.
Going this deep into the repair is a necessary evil, because you don't want to build a house on a bad foundation. And if we just replaced metal over top of this stuff, this inner metal will continue to deteriorate. Well, with that old piece off, that exposed some more bad news, but that's all right. We're gonna have to just keep digging on this old car until we're standing on solid ground. Well, we ground off all that filler, and all of that stuff was pretty much a perfect example of burying bad bodywork or bad metalwork. There was really no reason for that stuff to be that thick if it'd been done properly. So what we're gonna have to come back and do is cut across here right behind this bad patch and then kind of move forward from there. There's no real reason why to replace this entire tail panel whenever we can make a correct panel repair right here and then add in that new corner. The next repair we're going to have to make is this little corner down here, because if you notice, it's kind of rusty and that edge isn't existing anymore. So we'll just fab that piece up, no big deal. We also noticed whenever they made that repair way back when that they slice into the center rocker, so we'll have to weld it up. No, we're not going to cut up this new quarter yet, but we are going to use it for a tool to help make this patch for this piece. So what we're going to do is lay it up here, and if you notice, since that piece is rusty, we got to make sure that we have an accurate patch. So first things first, piece of paper. You want to make sure not to slide the paper around so that your line is accurate as possible. It should get us what we need. Cut this just a little bit bigger than our line. That way I can file it down the size when we go to put it in place. About that big. So let's make it just a little bigger. Put that piece over there. We won't be able to make the entire thing out of just one piece. since the curved part of the lip will have to be done separately. But in the meantime, we'll make as much as we can out of this one piece. We'll stick it in a vise and use a body hammer to bend this part of the lip down where it needs to be. Now to make this piece match this old piece, it needs to have, I gotta flip it around, right? Yeah, a little bit of a curve into it. And to do that, we're gonna keep using this vise. The next thing we need to do is bend up a piece of metal so we can finish off that lip that wraps around. Now, I've got a couple of old drops here that I think we can make it out of. Let's see if it'll work. What we'll do is shape it a little and trim it a little and go back and forth, doing that until we get where we want it to be. That's close enough we could tag that dude together right there. With it all welded up, we can trim off the excess metal and get it ready to fit the car. We'll also grind it down to make it look nice. Yeah, I believe that's gonna work just fine. I do have to trim off the top and the side just a bit because if you remember, I made it a little bit long to give me some wiggle room and I got a little bit too much right now.
Now the next piece to go on is going to be this big old quarter skin, but before we can install it, we've got to do some things to prep it, like punch some holes and grind off some of this E-coat. Of course, these holes are going to be where we weld through the skin to attach it to the car. It's as close as we can get to the factory spot weld method. And this E-coat goes away to give us a clean surface to lap weld this upper lip. Another thing we need to do before we can install this quarter panel is get this little corner piece welded on. Now the reason is because it welds to the quarter panel from the inside, and if we went ahead and stuck this on the car, we wouldn't be able to get to it, so we're going to do that now.
With that piece welded on, we can get our skin on the car and clamped in place. We'll use this quarter extension to line up the rear, filling around the edges to make sure everything is good. Next is to start tacking. Now if you notice, you look at the top of this quarter and it kind of does a wave. That's because whenever we cut this thing, the quarter relaxed. The way we're going to fix that is push this side out just a bit. That tightens both of them up. Now we can tack it in, takes care of that wave. We'll place the tacks a few inches apart, moving toward the rear. The far back bit is still bowed up just a little, so we'll gently move it into place with a body hammer. Better.
Now is a good time to place some more tacks on the upper joint since we've got it looking like we want. We can start moving around the panel, pushing and clamping the metal where we want it to be in each area, then making our rosette welds. After we've welded the panel up, we'll grind the visible areas to make them look nice.
Well, we got our quarter welded on and it looks pretty good. Somebody actually even gave me a gift, so I'm going to give them one back. The gift they gave me was this tiny dent whenever they dropped a pair of vice grips on it.
I hope you're not talking about me, because I didn't help.
Yeah, see, but like I said, I got you a gift, and you know what that is?
What?
You get to put the other side on.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
Today, we are continuing the work on our 69 Dodge Charger project. Now, I know it may not look like much now, but it is a work in progress, and when it's all said and done, it's going to be one cool ride.
We went ahead and snatched the engine out, and this is going to be our task for the day, waking up and re-beautifying this big old hunk of greasy metal.
Now, what we want to do today is add a bit more power to this old Mopar by installing a new top end kit. The right combination of properly matched components could really do this thing a lot of good. It wasn't that it ran bad before, it was just that it didn't have that low-end grunt that we thought a 440 cubic inch engine should have.
Looking at this engine, I bet it's going to be a perfect example of a lot of mismatched components. This intake on this thing has a power band of about 3,000 to 7,800 RPM. And I'm here to tell you that the rest of this engine didn't sound like it needed that big of an intake. But that's okay. We're going to go ahead and tear it down to see exactly what we're working with. Before cracking it open, it's a good idea to blow away any of that garbage that could fall into the engine. We'll start by pulling the carb off of it, along with the coil. Next up is the intake. The distributor can come out, and later we'll probably be replacing that with a newer one. We'll also have to get the front drive assembly knocked off here, and that's going to include the water pump. The crank pulley comes off with a few bolts, and then a puller will remove the balancer for us. Now let's get this timing cover off and take a look at the chain. Yeah, you could say it needed timing chain. Time to get the valve covers off, and we'll pop off this valley pan while we're at it. Dang, pretty clean. The rocker rails, which are kind of a Mopar signature thing, will be the next thing to go, along with the push rods. After getting the tins and the intake off of this thing, we can see the inside of the engine, and it's actually relatively clean. The problem that we do see is someone has painted the inside of here. This stuff is actually starting to come off, and that's what you don't want, because that's going to clog something up. And that can lead to a whole mess of problems. One of those is oil starvation, and you don't want that for sure. We're going to go ahead and tear this thing down, see what else we're working with.
Well, we've got some bad news. After getting the cylinder heads off, we found another problem. So we've got the paint peeling issue, strike number one, and then we can tell here inside the cylinder wall it's really worn. It's a good sign that it's been a long time since this thing's been rebuilt, and it's pretty much used up. Another problem is this timing chain, another good sign that this thing's worn out and needs to be rebuilt. So we're not going to take it any farther now. We're just going to send this thing out to a machine shop to have it rebuilt. What we're going to do today is tear into the front suspension and steering components and replace them with some new stuff, and that's going to give our Mopar a lot better handling and drivability. With the wheel and tire out of the way, we'll start disassembly by removing the dust cap. The cotter pin comes out next, followed by the hub nut retainer and the nut. Then the old drums and bearings can all slide off at once. We can go ahead and disconnect the brake hose from the hard line and unclip it from the bracket. This clamp will help prevent losing a bunch of brake fluid and making a mess. The 4 bolts holding the brake assembly to the spindle can be loosened, and the brakes can be removed as one unit. All right, guys, this is a really cool place to stop here and check this out. The ball joint is actually part of this steering arm here that bolts to the spindle and also to the tie rod end. Usually the ball joint's part of the control arm or attaches to the control arm in some way, but this one's actually part of the steering arm. It's kind of unique. They may have done that because the control arm's stamped and it was easier to put the eyelid on there, or maybe it was just 2 cents less per car. Either way, all this old stuff has to go. We'll get the tie rod loose from the steering arm, and that funky lower ball joint can hit the scrap bin. The sway bar links are next, and though these don't look too bad, we're gonna go ahead and replace them anyway. This Charger, like all Chrysler B-bodies, is equipped with a torsion bar style front suspension. The tension on the torsion bar must be removed by loosening this bolt under the lower control arm. The lower shock bolt can be loosened and removed. A roll pin acts as a keeper for the nut that mounts the radius arm to the K-member. Once it's out of the way, the nut can come off as well. The control arm nut is next. This retainer can go away, and the torsion bar can be driven back, along with the lower control arm. The control arm pops off, and the torsion bar can be removed. Okay, we've got the other side torn down as well, and we've got to get the rest of these steering components out of the way, but first, we're going to remove this sway bar. This brace that goes between the K-member and the radiator support is in the way, so it needs to go. The sway bar mounts are next, and just zip right out, with a little help from gravity. These steering components are all greasy and worn out, so we're just gonna zip them all off and toss them to the side. The K-member is next, and with the 4 bolts out, can be separated from the car. We're gonna do a little bit of cleaning on this K-member. It's too big for our parts washer and way too greasy to go straight into the blast cabinet. We want to make sure we get all the surfaces nice and clean, including inside all the holes. It's a little bit of a dirty job, but now's the time to do it while it's out of the car. The shock can go away next, and with it out of the way, we can work on getting these upper control arms out. With all the hardware gone, the A-arms can be pried out and set aside. After some time in the blast cabinet, our K-member looks a whole lot better. We're using some VHT high-temp roll bar and chassis paint to protect it from the elements and keep it from rusting. A few coats of this stuff, and this thing is gonna look brand new. When it comes to front steering and suspension components, there's a lot of moving parts, and therefore there are a lot of wear items, so we went to rockauto.com for all new stuff. We got a pair of those funky lower ball joint steering arms, upper ball joints, inner and outer tie rod ends, as well as a full set of press-in control arm bushings. We also got a pair of shocks, sway bar bushings and end links, tie rod adjusters, and an idler arm. The trusty old press is needed to get those old control arm bushings out of the way, and that goes for both the upper and lower arms. Some more time with the blaster will get the parts that we're reusing looking good again, and then they can get a few coats of that chassis paint as well. With all the paint dry, we can then press those new bushings into the control arms. The upper ball joints are next, and just like the stock ones did, these just screw right in. The boot finishes it off, and our upper arm can go in. A little persuasion may be needed, and we'll just reuse the hardware. A bit of grease needs to go into the hole in the K-member where the lower control arm pivot shaft will ride. The torsion bar can slide back into the control arm and be driven home with the hammer. The radius arm can then be tightened down onto the K-member. The shock can go next, followed by the lower ball joint and a cotter pin. Well, it's time to install our spindle, but we're gonna stop right here because we're actually gonna use this new spindle that comes with this disc brake kit that we got from Classic Industries. It looks better, it's gonna stop better and be safer for our B-body. This is a complete kit, so not only does it come with everything from the spindle all the way out to the dust cap, but it also comes with the most important thing when you're switching over to a disc brake kit, and that is the correct master and proportioning valve. And since this is power brakes, it comes with a booster as well. This spindle just bolts to the lower ball joint using the hardware that came with the kit. And it attaches to our new ball joint on our upper control arm at the top. We're chugging along on our 69 Charger, and we're well on our way to getting this old Mopar to stop, steer, and handle a whole lot better. We've already cleaned everything up and installed some new bushings, ball joints, and spindles. But we've run into a bit of a snag. These original sway bar mount bushings are captured inside the mount itself. The bushing right here is actually the part that we want to replace, but it looks like when they built everything, they encased it completely in this mount and welded it together. We're going to use the cutoff wheel to cut through the existing welds. A little work on the belt sander will clean up our cuts and ready the pieces to be welded back together. With the bushing in place, we can install the bracket and clamp it on with a C-clamp. This is where the bushing gets compressed, so it takes a little bit of patience to get it all lined up. And then we can tack them in place. A series of small, quick tacks is all we need to weld up these seams because we don't want it to get too hot and melt the new bushing. Now we've done a bunch of new suspension components here on our 69 Dodge Charger, and it's time to move on to the steering. One of the major problems we were having with the steering system on our old Mopar was this leaky steering box. It's got fluid coming out just about every single seal. It's got an original date of January 68, so it's probably the one that came on the car, and it looks like it's never been touched. So we went to Summit Racing for this quick ratio box. It's a 14:1 ratio and has 3.5 turns from lock to lock. It's a good upgrade for a stock piece, but it's also a great conversion box if your car had manual steering. Best part about this though, 10 pounds lighter than that stock piece. We're using the original bolts to get our new box onto the K-member. We'll just snug it down for now because we'll need to loosen it later to install the new universal joint. The only modification needed is for the column to be cut down just a bit to accept that new joint. We'll cut about 1 inch off and remove the rough edges. A little sandpaper will clean up the shaft, and some WD-40 will help that new joint get started. And with the box loose again, we can mate it to the joint. The mounting bolts need to be torqued to about 85 foot-pounds. The set screw and jam nut get tightened next. To secure the joint to the column, we just need to drill and hammer in the roll pin. And there's 2 more. The pitman arm can then attach to the new box, and it gets torqued to 120 foot-pounds. The new idler arm can then bolt to the K-member. The center link, which we're reusing because it's not a wear item, can then be attached to the pitman and idler arms. It gets tightened and secured with cotter pins. We're pre-assembling our tie rods using the new inners, outers, and adjusters. We'll use the old ones as a starting length, and that will get us pretty close on the alignment. The tie rods can attach to the center link and then to the steering arms. And a cotter pin will keep them there for many miles to come. Our new disc brakes can go on now, starting with the backing plate. These rotors came with new bearings all pre-packed with grease, so we can just seat them in and lock the nut with a cotter pin. The caliper assembly is next and just bolts to the spindle with 2 bolts. Then the brake hose can go on and get cinched down. Moving up to the engine bay, our old brake master cylinder can be removed, and the new one just bolts in its place. We have to adapt the brake lines to the new proportioning valve. And we'll tighten them down and we're all done. Now, a while back, we did some digging around on this car and we found out that not only was it not an RT like the badges say, but it wasn't even a big block car. So it wouldn't have come with that 8 3/4 axle from the factory, but it's a good thing somebody put that in there because it's a good starting point and those things are strong the way they come. But there are a few different variations of this rear end, and ours is actually the smallest and the weakest. We can tell because of these numbers that are cast into the differential dropout housing. It's a 41 series, meaning it's got an 1 3/8 pinion shaft, which is the smallest of the 8 3/4, and also has 30 spline axles. Now, they all came with 30 spline axles from the factory, and you can actually get up to a 35 spline axle in the aftermarket. Another couple of things we need to take into consideration would be, one, this leak. Looks like it's coming from that pinion seal, and in order to replace that, you got to take this whole thing apart. Also, here, the tag that tells us what the gear ratio is says it's 323s, which is kind of a highway gear. We think we can give this car a little more oomph with a lower gear ratio.
The way we're going to do that is with all these goodies from Yukon. Now, like Mark mentioned earlier, our Charger's gear ratio is a little bit too high for the way we're planning to drive it. So we're going to step it down to a set of 373s. Now, it won't be as long-legged out on the highway, but that's cool with us. From the factory, there are 3 different carriers, a 41, a 42, and an 89. Now, this particular unit is designed from an 89, but it's stronger than that factory unit because it's made of nodular iron. So it'll handle any and everything that we throw at it. We also want to make sure that we leave a pair of black marks on the pavement as evidence when we get a little bit excited. So we're going to install this POWERBLOCK POWs unit. Now, it's also a good idea to get you a master overhaul kit whenever you're doing an install like we are. Now, we went a little bit further and got us a setup bearing and this solid sleeve. This setup bearing has a larger inner diameter that will allow you to slide it on and off of the pinion. And what that'll do is that'll help ease setup. This sleeve is a lot stronger than a crush sleeve, so we got it for added insurance. As for axles, we kept the stock 30 spline. For our application and these being made of a stronger material, there wasn't any real need to upgrade to the 33 or the 35. Now, the flanges are also drilled to accept press-in or screw-in studs. Mopars have kind of an odd wheel bearing setup on them, where these Yukons have a similar setup like a 9-inch. You just simply press this retainer, bearing, and then that collar on, and it bolts into place. Now, before we can install all these cool new parts, we got to get out all them old junky ones. Can you smell the 90 weight yet? With the brake drums out of the way, we'll simply unbolt the axles from the housing and give them a little pry. And they'll slide right out. The center section is next. The 10 nuts that hold it into the housing can be removed, and a little pry will break it free, along with that old 90 weight. And the center section can be removed. There's a couple goodies in there. But let's put that new rear in here. We got to get all this stuff cleaned out. Man, I should have asked for some help.
Oh, some help, lightweight.
Dang,
What's wrong?
this thing was broken. We didn't even know it.
Look at that.
Check that dude out. Well, apparently the cross shaft and the pin in here has had some malfunction, because it ain't really supposed to do that. What probably happened is this pin that runs across there, which as you can see, the top of it up here, has sheared or broken, and then this thing started eating away at the carrier. Man, that's crazy. This thing didn't even make a noise driving it.
Not a bit.
I'm gonna leave this wore out, stinky son of a gun with you, if that's all right, and go grab me a coffee.
You don't even drink coffee.
I got somewhere to be.
All right, the first thing we're gonna do to begin assembly here is get our differential carrier housing in the vise, because that'll make it a lot easier to work on. And we need to get this inner pinion bearing race installed. That way we can measure, figure out what our pinion depth is. It's important to use the correct tool to install this race. If you damage it during installation, it'll sure eat up a new bearing in no time. We're installing this setup bearing onto our pinion now. What that's going to allow us to do is put this bearing on and take it off as many times as we need while we're measuring and get everything set up, figure out exactly how many shims we need. Then we can press on the real bearing for final assembly. We'll set up this pinion depth gauge, and that will help us find the measurement for our shims that we need to get everything lined up just right. This magnet sits on top of the end of the pinion head and the dial indicator reads off of it. Once we get the measurement, the tool can be removed along with the rig that holds it in place. The pinion also comes back out so we can add the shims. A little bit of math using the specs of our rear end minus the measurement we just took will give us the number we're looking for. 48, that's what our shims need to be. So we'll gather up 480 worth of shims, slide them on the pinion shaft, back on with our setup bearing, and it goes back in the case. Our new differential gets its new bearings pressed on. And we can prep our ARP ring gear bolts with some thread locker. The ring gear can slide onto the diff and get bolted on. Lefty tighty, righty loosey on these. Those get torqued to 55 pound-feet. All right, we've got our differential in the housing now, and I went ahead and preset the backlash, which we're gonna go over later, so don't worry about how we got that. What the backlash is, it's the distance in between the ring gear and the pinion gear. It's that little bit of play that you get right there. We'll show you how to do that later, but now we're actually gonna manually check our pinion depth. And to do that, we're gonna be using some of this marking compound. We'll just brush a good coating onto the drive and coast sides of about 4 teeth on the ring gear. We'll give it a spin and let it mesh with the pinion gear a couple of times. Now this is what we're looking for. We want the gear pattern to be nice and spread even across the tooth. That way you don't break any teeth or create more heat than you need to. With our pinion depth just right, we can take it back apart, starting with the main caps and the differential. The pinion comes back out as well, and that setup bearing can be set aside. Over at the press, the real bearing can be pressed on with the right amount of shims between it and the pinion head. We can then install the outer pinion bearing race. We're getting dangerously close to getting final assembly done on our 8 3/4 rear end that we're putting in our '69 Dodge Charger. And now we're at the point where we can start doing final assembly on the pinion. We've got the bearing pressed on with the correct number of shims in there, so that's done. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's time to install what would normally be this crush sleeve here, especially in a stock application. That's what goes in here. It goes in between the bearings, and what it does is, as you put this yoke on here and tighten it down, the bearings press on that crush sleeve and crush it down. And what it does is it keeps tension on both bearings, which is called preload. Now the problem with that is over time, if you've got a lot of horsepower and you're really driving it really hard or on the track, what'll happen is that crush sleeve will crush even more, and that'll trash your bearings or possibly even your ring and pinion. So Yukon makes this solid spacer here. The good thing about it is it's not gonna crush too far like that crush sleeve could. The bad thing about it is you can't use it to crush to set the pretension. So instead, you got these shims. We're just gonna start with a small assortment of shims as a starting point and go from there. The pinion goes into the case, followed by the outer bearing, then the yoke. Once it's tight, we'll give it a spin. See how that spins real freely once we got everything tightened? That tells me there's not enough pretension on those bearings, meaning we've got too many shims in there, so we need to take it apart, take some shims out. We know we're going in the right direction here, so we just took about half of them out, and it feels pretty good. What we're doing now is we're measuring pinion preload, and we're doing this with a dial style torque wrench because we don't want to measure what the breakaway torque, which is what it takes to get it to start moving, which is a higher reading. We want to measure rolling torque, which is once it starts moving, and ours is at 15 inch-pounds. which is right within spec. It's actually between 14 and 19. Actually feels almost like a doorknob if you're wondering what that feels like at home. Now we just need to take this apart. We can get the seal installed, put it back together, move on. The hammer gets this thing in pretty easy, as long as you're careful and take it slowly. Then the differential can go in for the last time. And once we get it in there, we can get the caps on and snug them down. Now we're gonna use this dial indicator here to check our backlash. We talked about it earlier. Now we need to check it and set it. All right, we've got, it's like 14 thousandths. So now we have too much of this play here, so we need to move the ring gear closer to the pinion gear, and we're gonna do that by adjusting these adjusters here. We just need to take the locks off here, and then on this side, we'll loosen it, and then on this side, we'll tighten it, and that'll move everything over that way. We're just using a four-wheel drive hub spanner for this since we had one in the building. Thanks, Ian. All right, we've made our adjustment and we've got it down to 8 thousandths backlash, so we're good to go. All right, well, all of our measurements are done and it looks like we're in really good shape. We just need to get these adjuster locks back on here. We'll get these main caps torqued down to 90 foot-pounds. And then just to be safe, I'll put some paint on these gears and run it through a couple of times just to make sure the gear pattern's correct. And this thing can go in the car. Some guys like using the gasket that's made for this, and others, like me, like using straight RTV. Then that fully assembled chunk can drop right in over the studs. We grab some new hardware and snug them all down. Well, we're at the point now where we can install our axles, but we need to do something first. These are actually cut to fit axles, so we knew this going in. But in order to get the measurement we need to make that cut, we need to get these bearings pressed on first. The bearing presses on first, flange side out. Then the retaining collar can be pressed down to mate with the bearing. The axle can go back in the housing, and using our micrometer, we can measure the distance from the brake backing plate to the inside edge of the flange. We'll lock down the mic and set it aside. The axle comes back out and gets locked into the vise. We'll transfer that measurement onto the axle and mark it. Masking tape will help make a straight line all the way around. Now it's time to cut. A regular old saw blade won't cut these things, so we have to use an abrasive disc on a big grinder. We'll clean up the end and bevel the edge. Well, we're almost ready to get our axles into our 69 Dodge Charger, but there's one more thing we need to do. That is install the lug studs. Well, we could go with an OE style set, but we've got something even better than that. We went to ARP for an assortment of wheel studs. All of their stuff is 8740 chrome moly, and it's heat treated to withstand 200,000 PSI, which means they can handle just about anything you can throw at them. They offer a bunch of vehicle-specific studs as well as universal kits. We've got a small assortment here, like these 5/8 diameter NASCAR studs. They're gray because they've got a dry lubricant baked on there, and they've got this little offset here. That way when you press them in, they don't spin in the hub. These are specific for C5 Corvettes. You just press your stock ones out, press these in. These are actually a good replacement for our stock ones here. They're just a little bit longer, and they've got that rolled edge on the tip. Make your lug nuts go on a little easier, but we're actually gonna go with this thread end style, which is made specifically for aftermarket axles like ours, and they got that nice CAD plating. These are a breeze to install. Just thread them in and cinch them down. The axles go back in for a final time and are attached to the housing using the old hardware. Well, the last step, of course, like always, is going to be to fill the fluid. So we got a few quarts of this Royal Purple Max Gear synthetic gear oil. We're going to put about 2.5 quarts into here, and that's going to keep this thing happy and healthy for a long time.
Now, speaking of Detroit muscle, we're about waist deep in an example of one of those, our 69 Dodge Charger project.
And it may look a little bit different than the last time you saw it because we've been busy tearing it apart and we got a bunch of junk here on the floor we need to clean up. But the reason we did that is because we're going to move on to the inside to start working on some of the sheet metal, mainly those floor pans.
And since the last time you saw it, we got that old nasty interior gutted, and boy was it bad. We also stripped off some major components like the front bumper, fenders, and doors. Whenever we went to go pick up our Mopar, we knew it needed some repair done here on the front side of the floor pans. Somebody tried to make a repair by just slathering in a whole bunch of old body filler, and that just ain't gonna cut it. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and replace this whole pan from side to side, and this seam here all the way up to there.
We'll start by marking out where our subframe rails and cross brace run along the floor so we don't cut into them when we're cutting out the sheet metal. We need to get that plastic body filler out of the way since the plasma cutter doesn't like dealing with that stuff. There's some more of it on the passenger side, hiding a hole big enough to fit a cat through. Now before we can just go cutting on that floor, we want to brace this thing up a little bit because this is a unibody car and the floor is part of the structure, so I'm going to run over to XOR, see if I can borrow some metal. This stuff right here is what I like to call fair and square tubing, because it's square, of course. We're just going to use a couple of these on each side and weld them here to the rocker. That's just going to provide a little bit of extra support.
Of course, before we try to weld anything to the car, we want to make sure to grind off the paint so we can get a nice solid weld. Then it's time to bust out the old plasma torch. We'll be careful to stay away from where we marked our bracing. And after a few minutes, we'll get a significant chunk of this floor cut out. Now we've got the majority of our floor cut out, but the next process that we got to do, well, it's a lot of work, plenty noisy, and a whole lot of dirty.
That's right, we're gonna start with this rock wheel right here. That's gonna make a lot of noise, but my favorite, gonna be a little later, that's gonna be this air chisel.
You could use a drill bit or spot weld cutter here, but we found a good old abrasive like this wheel can get the job done faster.
Another tip is to use an air grinder to chew away at any rust, paint, or body filler to reveal the spot welds. With the spot welds cut, it's time for that air chisel. This thing chews through sheet metal like a tornado in a trailer park.
We need to go back over where those spot welds were and get the surface cleaned up, because that's where we're going to weld in our new floor. We also need to vacuum all that debris out of the pockets in the structure. Years of this stuff accumulating in here is what causes a lot of this rust. Then we'll chase that with a wire brush to knock off the scale. Well, we blew all the dust out and wiped it down, and it's pretty much ready to go. So we're going to treat the rust inside of that rail, and what we're going to use is this product from Loctite. It's called Extend Rust Treatment. It's super easy to use. You just simply brush it on and let it do its thing.
This converts rust to a neutral surface, which will prevent any further corrosion from taking place once we've entombed it with our new floor pan. You want to make sure to cover all of the surface area completely, and it doesn't hurt to be generous with the amount you use. Now, in order to fill that big hole we just made cleaning out all that rusty sheet metal, we decided to go with this full front floor pan that we got from Auto Metal Direct. This is for all 66 to 70 B bodies, and it is a Mopar authentic restoration product, which means it comes with the OE thickness steel, and it comes with all the brackets you need to get it installed, like the parking cable bracket and this one here for the speedo cable. Now, one thing this did not come with though would be this hump here. This is for the 4-speed. Just need to get it installed right there.
It's a two-man job to get this thing in place since it's so big and awkward. Once we've got it where we want it, we can mark where we want to make our holes for our new spot welds, along with marking where we need to grind off the E-coat. Then we'll get it out of the car.
We'll grab our pneumatic hole puncher along with an air grinder and start getting this thing prepped to be welded in. We'll also need to bust out the drill to access areas where we can't get with our hole punch.
With the pan back in the car, we can start clamping it into place. Then it's time to burn some wire.
That did it.
We'll start in the middle and work our way out to prevent any bowing of the panel.
Well, the floor's done. We do have a couple of other little panels that we need to replace, and then we can get this thing sent off to the blaster.
Now, we've been making some pretty good headway on our old Charger here, but we got a bit more to do. We're trying to get all the rust cut out of this thing so we can start doing some of that body work. But before we can do all that, we got to do a little bit more stripping.
That's right. These things are prone to rusting out here at the bottom of the back glass, so we want to make sure we don't have any major problems there. But to get there, we need to get this vinyl top off, and get that glass out, and some of this trim. So we need to just get busy tearing that off.
The first order of business is we're going to be trying to get this trim off around the back glass. Now, it can be a little bit tedious, but you know, it's pretty important to do it the right way. Now, you can do it with some very basic tools, or you can buy the little special one out there that makes the job a lot easier. What you want to do is take this little trim tool here and actually use this hook onto the clip that's up under here. You'll have to slide it up under there, kind of wedge it in there, and then once you find the clip, you'll actually rotate this thing around, and that will pull the clip to the center of the glass, releasing the chrome. I usually like to start either in a corner or at the end of a piece of trim. You're feeling for a clip to release some of the pressure, and once you find one, just keep working on it until it comes loose. You can lift up on the trim, but don't get all He-Man with it. You don't want to damage it. It's the same method on both sides and all the way around. After getting that trim off, you can see why these things rust out as bad as they do. All the debris from this back glass washes down off here in this trough and collects. Now, it also looks like somebody has done some shoddy repair work by cramming some body filler here in the corner to patch a rust hole. Now, that isn't going to work for the style car that we're building, so this glass has got to come out.
Now, the way they attached the glass back in the day on cars like this is with soft butyl, not a hard urethane like modern cars are. Now, this glass looks like it's been in here a long time, so we might be able to just pop the thing out without having to get in there and cut it. So we put Tommy inside. We're going to try to give it a push. If we can't get it out, we'll cut it out. You ready?
Yeah, let me get my shoulder into it.
I'll catch it. Oh, moved a little bit. Yep, she's moving. If you had it going good over here, if you just come back over here and then work your way down, I think you'd be better.
Listen to him.
This way you're punishing me for that not buying your lunch?
No, I mean, I thought you enjoyed stuff like this. Yep, yep. All right, you gotta work your way down. Or not. It's coming.
That's you now.
There's definitely some rust down there.
Hope that wasn't too hard for you.
No. Now once we got the glass out, we can see in here a little better that there's rust coming up here into the sail panel. It's actually worse on the other side, but now we know we definitely need to get this top off.
Before we can go to pulling on this vinyl, we got to get all this trim out of the way. Now, just like that piece of trim back there around the back glass, this little side molding right through here can be damaged as well with this groovy little tool. Don't use this thing. Another way to get that thing off is with a short little piece of paint paddle and a tapping hammer. Slowly start working the trim off, moving down the line to keep it from bending. Sometimes you have to backtrack just a bit, but with a little patience, you will save that trim. Look, we got that thing off, didn't distort the lip at all, and all it needs now is a simple polish.
What do you think we're gonna find?
Bad decisions.
I think those are inside the car. This panel, which is called the trunk filler or the deck lid filler panel, needs to be replaced, or at least part of it does. This looks straight, but it's actually curved this way, and the glass is curved as well. Even though it's just a little bit, it is a compound curve. So it might be a little difficult to make that piece and the glass fit properly. So I sent Tommy out to go get a new panel, and then we'll either replace the whole panel or just that piece. We'll decide once we get in here. Let's go ahead and remove the trunk lid to get it out of the way. 4 bolts is all it takes to do that. Then we'll grind away the corrosion and dirt so that we can see where the spot welds are at. Grabbing a spot weld cutter, we'll get those drilled out to free up this part of the panel. I'll draw a line where I'm going to make my cut. The straighter the cut is, the easier it is to repair. A cutting wheel will make short work of slicing the metal, then we'll grab the air chisel to split the seams. Bad news. We've got a rat's nest in here, which could mean that the metal underneath is severely corroded. Well, we went ahead and just cut that little strip out because that was the only part that was rusty, hoping that we could just take a piece of the new panel and patch it in here. But once we got down in here, we could see all that rat's nest, and where it was, there's a bunch of rust in there. So we need to go ahead and get this panel off so we can get that rust cleaned up.
Hey man, how's it going? I just got back from Steven's Performance and got our new panel. Ugh.
Yeah, nice panel, but I don't want to put that in yet because it's pretty crusty. It looks like a bunch of rats had a pee-pee party in here for several years.
At least that.
So maybe we just send it off to the blaster while it's open and then put that in later.
That'd probably be a good idea.
Cool.
Hey guys, what we're going to be doing today is replacing the trunk pan inside of our old Charger here. Now we're not going to be replacing the whole thing because, well, it's extra work and it's really not all that bad. We're going to do just primarily here in the center because that's where most of the rust is at. Well, when I say most, where the holes are. And first thing we got to do is mark this thing off, then we can get to cutting. What I've marked off here may look a little odd to you, but like I mentioned earlier, we're not replacing the entire floor. We're going to cut this piece out and this piece here. What I've marked off right through here is a brace that goes across that supports the gas tank. Now we've got to cut out that spare tire bracket before we can get any of this out of the way, so we need to make some sparks. Next, we'll drill a few starter holes for the body saw. Then it's time to start slicing. Now we got a couple of the big chunks cut out of the way, but the next step we're going to have to do is trim this lip back to the top edge of this frame rail. Now once we put our panel back into place, welded into position, it'd be hard to tell that we even made a repair from the bottom side of the car. Now obviously from the top there will be a joint that runs front to the rear of the trunk floor, but once we put some seam sealer on it, it'll look real nice. With it cut, we'll take a grinder and make sure those two surfaces are nice and flush. With that done, we can start cleaning up the area where we're going to be welding the new panel in. That includes scraping off this old coating, followed by some grinding. Well, we got the perimeter cleaned up, and the next thing we need to do is remove this top piece off of the brace. We're going to slice it across here and on the other side. Now there's some spot welds on the top of here that we're going to have to remove to get that piece off. And what I'm planning to use is this grinder. With that edge sliced open, we can start prying up the metal and work towards those spot welds. Then we'll bust out that grinder we talked about to cut the weld. Once the top piece is removed, we can use a grinder to clean up the surfaces in preparation for some welding. And we'll also clean up the channel with a wire wheel just to get rid of any rust. Ta-da! Now we're just about ready to burn some wire on the trunk panel replacement on our 69 Charger project. Now we got this panel from Stevens Performance, and I've got it taped off where it needs to be cut down to.
Hey, I'm sick of working on that motor for that Mustang. Can I give you a hand?
Sure, if you'll grab a body saw, I'll let you cut this thing up. Anyhow, now I have this thing marked off quite a bit bigger than the hole that we cut, and I did that for a reason. This allows me to put it in, kind of fit it, and then trim it down if I need to. If you cut it a little bit short, well, you gotta buy a new panel, so don't screw up.
Oh, inside or outside?
Outside.
All right, cool. With it sliced down, we can test fit it and see how much it's going to need to be trimmed. A couple relief cuts need to be made for these braces at the rear, so we'll mark those and get them cut. Now that the panel sits down where it's supposed to, we'll figure out where the edges need to be trimmed and get some marks laid down, then pull it out of the car.
Well, we test fit the panel and it fit like a glove. Now we need to punch some holes in it so that we can plug weld it into place. This hole punch makes the job a snap, but you can use a drill if you need to.
Tommy, that looks good. Better than putting the whole panel in, huh?
Yeah, it saved us quite a bit of work, and you know, we're getting pretty close to the end of the rope whenever it comes to the sheet metal repair. About all we like is, you know, fitting that front stuff.
Send it to the blaster.
That's it, man.
Well, we're getting real close to getting this thing off to the blaster. We got to get this front sheet metal fit first, and I thought we had all the metal work done, but there's one panel that still needs some love. Come on over here, let me show you. Well, with all that sheet metal work we were doing on the floors and the quarters, we almost forgot about the doors.
Yeah, I knew it had some back here on the bottom and the back, but I didn't know it had some up front.
Yeah, it's not that bad, actually. I ground it down just to see. I thought we'd have to put door skins on them, but
Yeah,
looks like they're fine.
Looks like you could just put a patch on the front and back and be all right.
Yep, I'm gonna do that. Get busy.
I'll go let you at it.
We'll start by grabbing a grinder to knock the rest of the paint off here where we'll be working. Now I am gonna cut a piece of metal out here and patch it in, but before I do that, I'm gonna weld this piece in here across. That way when I do cut the metal out, this part doesn't relax and fall down into a dip. With that plate tacked on, we can get the cutting wheel and start slicing out the rusted area. No need to cut very deep, we're just removing the skin metal here. Well, this is the piece we cut out, and as you can see here, it's rusting from the inside out. And there's even some spots like this one right here that haven't rusted through yet, but it definitely would have rusted there, so we know we're good because the area of the scab is contained in this piece we cut out. A metal blaster is a good way to remove the rest of the rust that's under where our replacement metal will go. We'll grab a can of Duplicolor Rust Fix to deactivate any remaining oxidation. It works by using a chemical reaction to prevent the rust from spreading any further. Well, now that that's cured, I'm going to spray some Duplicolor Weld-Through Primer. Here's the piece I made, and as you can see here, when I lay the piece on top of it here that I'd cut out, it's got these extra tabs here and here. Now the reason I did that is because we want to make sure that we get a good weld all the way around, and on this side and this side we've got the backing of the inner structure. And now these tabs are actually going to provide backing for the welds on this side and this side, so we just need to get it fit in here and weld it up. Once she's welded up, we'll grab a grinder and smooth it out. Then, onto the other patch. Well, I got the driver's side door all patched up, and we went ahead and hung it and got it adjusted so we can start fitting this front sheet metal. But first, we got to get this passenger door adjusted.
Whenever you're doing something like this, well, it can be rather tedious, but we're going to show you guys what it takes to line up the panels, just in case you're working on something at home.
With the bolts loosened up a bit, the door can be manipulated. A paint stirring stick is a good gauge to tell how nice your gaps are. Tightening the bolts once you're close can lock the adjustments you've made. All right.
Brother, we need to scoot the door forward some. You got any more?
Maybe a little on the bottom, but the top one's maxed out. Nothing a little die grinder can't fix though. We gotta get the hinge off though.
A die grinder will let us extend the size of this hole so that we can move the door just a little bit further to get it straight. With the hinge done, we'll repeat that procedure on these two holes in the jamb. Then we can reattach the hinge to both the body and the door. All right, cinch it down.
All right.
Yeah, that gap right there is a whole lot better. It's far more consistent. And now we can move on to the front sheet metal.
After the doors, you always do the fenders next, since you gap them off of the doors.
Our fender's a little lower than the cowl, but adding a shim will put it where it needs to be. Well, we're pretty much ready to go ahead and start installing this hood, and I have to say this has to be one of the tallest ones or longest ones I've put on. You ready, big man?
Yeah, I guess.
You get the bottom. Oh. See where we're at. A little wide over here. Well, we're actually hanging over. This one is easy. Loosen these 2 bolts and slide this side forward a bit.
It's better here. Looks like she lines up real nice.
Oh yeah.
That good?
Okay, time for the fun part. Now that we've got all of our panels lined up, we get to take them back off along with the suspension in preparation to take this car to the blaster. I'll get the rotisserie attached while some other people are messing around.
Well, there's one more thing that we need to take off here before we can send this car off to the blaster. That's our horns up here. Well, we made it to the blaster, so we'll get her unloaded and shoved inside Blast from the Past in Lebanon, Tennessee. We trust these guys to do most of our blasting.
Well, we just dropped our car off here at Blast from the Past, and we're going to get this thing stripped down. Now, a couple of you guys may be wondering why you would want to do this. Well, here's why. Now he had to stop just for a few minutes to refill the hopper, but this gives us a good opportunity to show you guys some of the advantages of doing it this way. Now the underside of this car had a tremendous amount of undercoating on it, as you can see here. Now some of it can be about a ½ inch thick, and trying to remove this stuff with putty knives, scrapers, and a wire wheel, well, that can take you hours and hours to get it remotely this clean. So doing it this way can save you a whole lot of time.
So that's why you always want to take it to a professional that knows what they're doing.
We finally get to do some body work on this 69 Charger that we've been working on for a long time. It's gonna be a whole lot of work, but it's gonna be worth it in the end.
Yeah, and a big job like this normally takes days or weeks, even months to accomplish just because the amount of man hours it takes. And one way to speed that up is to bring in extra help. For example, we've got Spike here from Spike's Performance and Refinishing, and he's gonna be giving us a hand today.
Now he's not the only one, but he's the first one that showed up, but it's time to get started. When we picked up this Charger, it was a fairly rough running and driving car. But after a whole lot of fixing, she's ready for some body work.
Well, the first thing that I'm gonna get started on is I'm gonna work on these front fenders and hood. As you can see, they've still got that factory E-coat on them because these were brand new. What we need to do is we need to put some 120 on a DA on there, just give it a once over to improve the mechanical adhesion. What that means is that's gonna give this thing some texture, so whatever we go with next, whether it be primer or filler, we'll give it something good to stick to. Now this thing does its work pretty quickly, so we need to keep it moving and not spend very much time in any one spot. We're just roughing it up, not going down to bare metal. See, here's some tape or glue from the packing material this hood was packed in. We need to get that off before we sand, so I've just got some lacquer thinner here on a rag. I'll wipe it off first. And then I'm gonna dry it with a dry one. With that done, I can finish roughing up these new panels.
Whenever we got our doors back from the blaster, we noticed that one of them had been involved in a fender bender at some point, and the repair that was made isn't up to our standards. It's got some holes in it that are evidence of that old screw type dent puller, and that's not what we're going to use to make our repair. What we got is a stud type where it takes one of these little things and welds it to the panel, then you use the little slide hammer to snatch it back out. Now I'm gonna let Spike do the duty, if you will, and I'm gonna get busy doing something else. Spike's gonna start by grinding off some of the primer. He runs Spike's Refinishing in Ocala, Florida, and comes highly recommended.
In my business, I do a little bit of everything. I specialize more in painting and do some body work. After we got this process down and grinding, now we're gonna use the studs so we can remove the dent.
Using a stud gun like this one instead of the old style screw-in slide hammer saves a lot of work because you don't have to go back and address a bunch of holes. With the studs attached, Spike can go back and pull out this long, narrow dent with the special slide hammer. The studs can be cut off, and after that, the remains can be ground down flush.
There are a couple of holes to weld up from a previous repair, which also need to be ground down. Then Spike is going to grab a DA sander to prep the area for filler. These cars have a pronounced body line in the form of a simulated scoop on the door, which is a hallmark of these second-gen Chargers. It's a real challenge to repair doors on these cars because you have to fix the problem area, which is the dent itself, but you also got to do it without altering the shape of the body lines.
What does that mean? Lots of quality time with filler and a longboard, and maybe a sander as well. Spike is using guide coat to help identify high and low spots on the panel.
We still got some more work to do, but it's gonna look great.
Well, we're ready to start filling this factory joint where the roof and the quarter panel meet up. What I'm going to be using isn't just a standard run-of-the-mill type filler. It's actually an aluminum reinforced filler, and it has a couple of benefits to it. One of them, it's a lot stronger than that standard stuff, plus it's waterproof, and with it being really close to the strip rail, that's a big benefit. One thing to keep in mind whenever you're mixing your fillers is make sure to use it on a surface that isn't going to wick your fillers or your hardener. Now, a lot of times I've seen guys use something like cardboard, and really and truthfully, that's just practicing to screw up. Something like this, it's a good idea to kind of smush it into that crack or that crevice. Now, if your filler starts to harden up, don't try to put it on the panel. Go ahead and throw it away, because otherwise you'll be running into pinhole problems or adhesion and that kind of thing. Now, this stuff cures just like any of the other filler and sands like it as well. We're going to let it do its thing and come back and sand it down a little later.
So now begins the most beloved stage of any build. All that sanding and filler spreading that everybody loves to do so much. The big plan right now is to rough in the shape of the panels in preparation for the car's first coat of filler primer.
We still got help from Spike, and luckily for us, we've had some more show up in the form of our old buddy, Kiwi. Well, we've got our Charger all shaped up, and we're pretty much ready to start spraying on some primer. We got a little bit of taping to do, but that's no big thing. Now, what we're going to be spraying on is a super high build polyester primer. And this stuff goes on just like, any other type of primer, but it's a whole lot thicker. Now, you also may notice we got an extra guy here. This is Kiwi. He's helped us out on the show before, and he screwed up and answered the phone whenever I gave him a call.
And boy, are we glad he did pick the phone up, because we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Tommy Boches was on the other end, and he said, "You want to come and help out for a few days?" So I said, "Sure." Tom's always fun to be around. When I first met him, it was a little bit like being in an episode of Green Acres, but other than that, once we got past that, it was all good.
Kiwi runs Kiwi Classics and Customs in Franklin, Tennessee. We know he does good work. He's helped us before. Speaking of which, another good friend, Richard Wood, came to lend a hand too.
When you're spraying primer, and you always want to keep a wet edge, and you give it some flash time, but they were what I call double gunning it, one on each side. And when you're using the polyester, as soon as you open it up, it starts to skim over on the top. So it helps. I had one in each hand, keeping them going. to keep them stirred up. As soon as you quit stirring it, it starts to try to skim over. So if you really don't have that going on, they'll have to get out of the booth, get back in the booth. So it helps tremendously for them just to kind of pop their cup out. I'd fill it up, and they'd just keep on spraying.
It's looking good. We've got a good layer of high build primer on there. Got to let it cure for overnight and then start block sanding.
It was a big challenge, but I think we did pretty good.
Well, it's the next day and our primers had time to cure. We went ahead and let Kiwi and Spike take a break, but we kept Richard on and he's gonna give us a hand blocking the car. Now, I'm not really sure how to do this. It's a little out of my wheelhouse, but he's gonna give me a few tips. All right, Richard, I've got my block here, ready to start blocking, right?
Okay. Thank you. I'll take that from you.
All right, so what do we do?
Well, first thing we're going to do is Spike did a really good job of straightening these panels out. We don't want to, well, first of all, we don't want to mess up what he's already done.
Right.
So we put a line out here to save the body line that he's already created for us. And we take some guide coat. I like using powder guide coat, not like spray can guide coat and stuff, because when you spray can, it goes kind of zebras it a little bit. So just kind of smear it on. If you see little lines like this, you want to stay away from these, because Spike took a lot of time to put these little those in here. So you definitely don't want to dig in with a sanding block. But don't really want to pinch it, because if you pinch it, you dig in.
Right.
So sand down to the line. And what that tape's doing is saving what he has done. And you can sand up. So what the guide coat does is kind of shows you the high spots, the low spots. And so we'll continue to sand this until we either hit a good substrate, which hopefully we won't hit bare metal, but we may. And we just stop sanding and go from there.
So my 36 is no good?
No, sir. It's a little aggressive.
Well, Richard got the top of our door blocked here above that body line. Richard, what's next?
Well, now that we sanded down to the tape, we actually put some more tape on here, and we're going to sand up to the tape. And the reason being, you know, Spike did a really good job at the body work and had the lines really straight, but when you block it, sometimes you can make them do this.
Right.
Well, when you block down to the tape, it makes it straight as an arrow. So we're going to put the tape and block up to it, and it makes it super, super straight, really crisp lines. So when you look down the car, it's got perfectly straight body lines.
Cool, let's do it.
So let's do it. Just kind of touch it, touch it, touch it, touch it, and then you start patting it, and then you can kind of rub it. If you just start rubbing tape, it'll make it move on you. So that's when you kind of pat it first. And then if you look down at it, straight, straight, straight.
With the old tape removed, some guide coat can be applied.
Let's do a little spot here. Look for obviously the dark spots, and just sand until they're gone. Only takes about an hour.
It's time for me to go to lunch then.
Yeah. Bodywork is an art, and either you have it or you don't. So I would say it's not for everybody. You can try all day long, but it's tough stuff.
Richard owns Richard Wood Customs in Austin, Texas. We've worked with him on a couple of projects, including a first-gen Mustang SEMA build. He's the right man for the job to help get this Charger straightened up.
Just got done sanding up to this line, and as you'll notice, as I pull this, you'll see this little black line. That's what's left. That shows the actual style line. So when we get done pulling this, we'll come back with the sandpaper and we'll soften this line. And you kind of just and as you can see, that softens the line just enough to where it's not too sharp. And you just kind of chase it all the way back. There you go.
Today's a big day for us here in the shop because we finally get to spray some color on our 69 Charger project.
But before we get too carried away, we've got one more step that we need to take. It's not terribly complicated, but it's pretty important, and there's a right and wrong way to do it. What I'm referring to is applying seam sealer. Now I've got a couple of different tubes here. One you clean up with water, the other one requires a solvent. Now I also have a tub of the brushable type, and we're going to show you guys how to put this stuff on. Now whenever you're applying it, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. Make sure that you apply it over a prime surface, and also you want to make sure you give it plenty of dry time. If you get on it too fast, well, you're going to screw with the drying of this stuff, and also it can push your paint off. Now we've got several places we're gonna have to slather in all this goo. We got some down here, a couple up here, a whole bunch on the inside, right up here. But the first one we're gonna start with is up top. First thing to do in this process is you'd wanna make sure that you scuff the surfaces that you're gonna be applying it on. Now we've been rubbing all over this car for days on end, and I sanded this joint so we can move on. The next thing you wanna do is use a clean towel and some form of some solvent to make sure everything's all nice and clean. What I've got here is some simple old wash-up thinner. Now we'll just wipe it on there and clean it up nice and spiffy. Now we need to do a little bit of taping. All we're using is some 3/4 masking tape, and whenever we apply all that goo, this will make cleanup a lot easier. All we're trying to do is attach this tape right here on the peak of the edges of this thing. Now we just got to do the same on the top side. It doesn't have to be super duper exact, but you want it pretty close though. Now we're pretty much ready to start applying some seam sealer, but our little tube here has a graduated tip on it, and you don't want to cut this thing off too short because your path will be too wide. Now whenever I trim off the tip on this thing, I don't like to cut it square, I like to cut it off at an angle. Now inside this tube, there's a seal that you're gonna have to break. And if you use a screwdriver to do it, you wanna make sure that this thing is sterile and clean more or less. Because if it's got oil and grease and contaminants on it, whenever you squeeze this stuff out, well, you're putting it on the panel that you're fixing to be painting on. There we go. Tape pulled up a bit. Now with some thinner and a pair of gloves, dip your fingers in there. That'll help lubricate them, and you can slick that stuff way off. Another example of a joint that we need to apply some sealer on is right here in the door jamb, and we could show you guys how to apply the water-soluble seam sealer, but it's basically the same thing as we showed you back there on the rear. The main thing when using this stuff that you need to keep in mind is the dry time. You need to give it plenty of time, so if you don't mind waiting, say 24 hours or so, this stuff is exactly what you need. We're going to switch it up to the big can of sealer here on the floor. This surface won't be seen once the car is assembled, so it's not as important to make it look good. But you do want to squish it into the cracks and smooth it out a bit. It's almost like the crappier you can make it look, the more accurate it would be to the restoration. Because you know there was this old boy working at the plant that pulled one of them all-nighters that was working on a 69 Charger at one time that said, "Whew, man, I'd call in sick, but hell, all I do is squirt on seam sealer." Well, we've got our car seam sealed and we're pretty much ready to start prepping for paint. We're gonna go ahead and tape up everything because we're gonna spray this car in one big go around, if you will. Now, if you remember back whenever we painted our Chevelle, we painted the belly of the car first, and then we come back and painted the exterior. With this thing, we're painting this thing 360 degrees around at one time. The main idea with this tape is to keep the overspray from getting on the interior panels, which is messy. And we'll use paper for the big openings like the windows and doors. Well, it's finally trigger time. I've got to mix up some sealer that we're going to be spraying on, and it's got a little induction time where it needs to set for just a bit. And then after that, well, we can spray it on. The point of this sealer is to provide a uniform substrate for the entire canvas. And you'll notice that this sealer is black, because whenever your base coat is dark, you want a dark sealer. And likewise, if you were painting the car light color, we'd use a light colored sealer. Now we got our sealer on and it's all flashed off and it's ready for some paint. Now what we're going to be spraying on is some base coat. 9700 is the code that we're using. Now this is just simply black. It doesn't have any red, blue, or nothing like that in it. And this stuff we got from Single Source. They helped us out with all of our material that we're using on this thing. But that's enough talking. Let me do some mixing and we can get to spraying. We'll use a tack cloth to remove any dust or fibers that have settled on our surface since we've sprayed the sealer. Time for base coat, baby. We're using a 1-3 tip on our gun with approximately 15 pounds of pressure. I'm spraying it at about a 50% overlap to make sure we get full coverage. We're going to spray about 2 coats of this and move on. Up next is the clear coat. Some of you guys may have noticed that we didn't spray any base coat on the roof, and that's because we're planning to put a vinyl top on it. However, we are going to be clear coating it. Now, whenever we're spraying our clear on, we're going to kind of stack them around a little bit odd because we're not going to put all the coats on all the panels, because basically we're wanting to put 4 on the quarters, we're going to put 2 under the bottom of it, and 1 over the roof. Now, with spraying the clear coat, we're using a different gun, but it's basically got the same setup on it. Since the car is getting sprayed pure black, we can do it on the rotisserie while it's completely disassembled. If this was a metal flake or a pearl paint job, we'd have to shoot the car with all the body panels installed. Notice we've based and cleared the floor to give the car a higher end look. We could have hid some mistakes with some undercoating, but the finish on this car doesn't require that. By the time it's all said and done, we'll lay down 4 coats of clear. Well, the old Charger turned out pretty slick, and I still got a few more panels that I'm gonna have to final sand and get them back in the booth so that we can spray on some more of that shiny black paint. It's really cool to see that car back shiny again, and that means it's 1 step closer to being back on the road.
As you know, we recently got the paint sprayed on our '69 Dodge Charger, but getting that base and that final coat of clear sprayed is not the last step of the process.
So you guys know what that means. It's time for us to give that Charger just a little bit more love. Now, it looks pretty good right now, but this next step is going to take it to a whole nother level. And we brought in some help. We've got Rob with Sonax, and he's going to help us shine this thing up. Now, you've got a bunch of goodies here. What'd you bring us?
We did bring an assortment of our products from Sonax. Today, to really bring out the shine, we're going to concentrate on the professional line, our polishes and compounds. Once we've sanded to remove the orange peel, the next step will be to go to our Cut Max, which is our cutting compound, and this is the first step to bringing back the luster and the gloss of the paint. Then we'll go to one of our 2 polishes. Perfect Finish is designed specifically to be used with a rotary machine, and our EX0406 is designed to be used with a dual action machine.
So what's the benefit to your compounds?
Well, one of the key benefits is it's water-based, which basically means that there's a long working window and there's literally no dusting, which helps in the cleanup process.
Well, I guess before we can get to shining it up, we need to sand it. Let me grab some buckets and we can get started.
Let's do it.
We're just using some good old high quality H2O and some sandpaper. The idea here is to cut the grain out of this thing so that we have a nice, true, flat surface that we can polish to a high shine. Well, we got our panel all sanded down nice and flat, and we finished it off with some 1000 grit paper. Now it's time to make it shiny again.
Yeah, we'll start out with the CutMax, which is our cutting compound, along with a wool pad and a rotary machine, and really it's the first step in bringing back the gloss of the paint.
When you're starting with a fresh or dry buffing pad, you need to load it first. You just squirt on some of the material and rub it in. Then you can add a few dollops to give you some compound to work with.
The real beauty of this product is that it contains diminishing abrasives, meaning that the abrasives in the compound gradually break down into a smaller size while retaining their cutting ability. This makes buffing super easy because it eliminates several steps. You don't have to switch pads and compounds to achieve the desired effect. The purpose of the CutMax is to remove any major imperfections such as scratches, which it does on the front end. You want to work in really small areas for ideal results. As the abrasive breaks down, it takes on a polishing quality, and you'll start to see the gloss appear in the clear coat.
Man, that looks good. So what's the next step?
Well, we're going to switch now to the polishing stage. In this case, I'm going to switch to a DA machine in the EX0406.
So how does that compound really work?
Well, it'll pick up where the CutMax left off with the diminishing abrasives. It'll continue to remove the minor imperfections that are still in the paint, but it'll leave a really, really nice polish at the end.
So you're telling me it's just these two compounds and these two pads. It ain't 4 or 5 other steps?
That's the beauty of Sonex. The technology behind these products, it can help eliminate at least 1, maybe 2 steps.
Well, I'm gonna let you get at it. Since this pad is new, we gotta load it up as well.
The reason I've switched to a dual action polisher is because I think it makes things just a little easier. It might be a better choice for a DIY guy because a DA is much more forgiving with a lower learning curve. You'll still want to work in a small area, and since the polish is water-based, cleanup is super easy.
We're gonna keep working this quarter panel one small section at a time until it's done. Daggone, that reflection looks really nice.
Yeah, it does. It looks really good.
That compound you brought us really does the job.
Rest is up to you.
We're plugging away on our 69 Dodge Charger here. We got the quarter panels all buffed out real nice. We're getting ready to start installing this vinyl top.
We got ours from Classic Industries, and I've heard these things can be a little difficult to install, so I brought in some help. You guys meet Mark Coates. He's with ABM Restorations.
Yeah, Tommy, these things can be a little bit of a pain sometimes. We'll see if we can get this one on right.
To bring y'all up to speed on Mark's talents, he does some serious concourse restorations, specializing in Mopars, and sprinkles in a hot rod every now and then, like this beautiful shoebox Chevy. So what's this first step you're doing?
We're going to mark a location of the trim clip holes so we can find them after the top is installed.
What's next after that?
We're going to find center of the top and center of the car.
All right. After finishing up marking those holes, we'll use a seamstress tape
52 inches
to find the middle of the car. On the back, this car actually has a notch that tells you where the center is. We got to find the center of the top, and Mark's got a simple way to do it.
We're going to fold this over and line up the seams, clamp them in place. It makes a real simple way of finding center.
Mark's using his steady hand and a blue marker to draw the center line on the top. Then we'll use a string to pull a line between the 2 marks we made and draw along it with a silver marker. Then we simply line up the 2 center lines and lay the top out flat with the help of some magnets. Now it's time to glue it down. We're just applying a strip of glue along the front portion of the roof to get us started. This is a special vinyl top adhesive, which needs to be applied on both surfaces, the roof and the vinyl top. With both of the center lines lined up and stuck together, we can flip the rest of the top over and apply more adhesive on both of our lines. And with some help, the top can be laid into place. With that done, we're going to mask off the car because we're getting ready to spray some sticky stuff to speed up the process. Once we spray both surfaces with this stuff and let it dry, we can start laying the top into place for the final time. This technique allows you to work from the inside out, and we're not stretching it, just getting it to lay flat. Now it's time to go back and glue the edges, work them tight into the drip rail, and trim off the excess. Well, Mark, the thing turned out pretty nice, and I tell you, it wasn't nearly as bad as I was anticipating, but it probably had something to do with you doing most of the work.
Could have.
The vinyl top is installed, and it's finally ready to go back together.
But before we just start throwing parts at this car, we want to kind of get an idea of what road we're headed down. This is the rendering we've been working with since the beginning. We're calling this thing Hard Charger, but as you can see, we wanted to keep this thing kind of stock looking. Nice shiny black paint, red tail stripe, period correct vinyl top, possibly some aftermarket wheels, and some upgraded drivetrain.
So we've got a few options on the table whenever it comes to the direction of the build of this thing. So we brought in an expert. This is John Kramen with Mecum Auctions. And you can say this guy's got his finger on the pulse when it comes to the trends of the day.
Restomods continue to be a very popular part of the collector car world. Really like what you've done with this build. Very high quality, stock in the appearance of it, but it's really the power plant that determines the personality. And I'm really anxious to see what you have in mind. Recently, Mopar has released the Hellcat engine, 707 horsepower in a box. I wonder if that would work in there.
Yeah, you know, we did talk about putting one of them late model Hemis in that car early on.
Yeah, we did, but you know, knowing now that we can do 707 horsepower with the Hellcat, you know, that might be something we could get on board with.
Well, John, I want to say thanks for coming to see us and giving us some insight on this decision we're going to have to make.
Well, my pleasure, guys. Always love talking horsepower.
Now, a few shows ago, we had John from Mecum Auctions in our shop, and we were discussing what kind of power plant we were going to put in our '69 Dodge Charger. Well, we finally made a decision. Can you guys guess what it is? Let's get this thing in the shop so you all can check it out. In 2015, Dodge dropped a nuke on the muscle car world with the brutal new Hellcat program. Initially available in Charger and Challenger models, this supercharged beast really upped the ante. There's no denying that the Hellcat line, whether it be a Charger or Challenger, is a substantial ride. And Dodge, knowing that, well, they're now offering the power plant that would come in one of those as a crate engine, and they're calling it the Hellcat. Now, from the beginning, whenever we were putting together our old '69 Charger, we had kicked around the idea about installing a late model Hemi into it. And with this option now being on the market, well, I guess you could say that decision was pretty easy. So we're going to be installing this 707 horsepower supercharged Hemi into that '69 Charger.
Now, you probably remember this thing. This is the 4-speed that came out of our '69 Dodge Charger. Had the 440 in front of it when we got the car. We rebuilt this thing, but it's still not going to be able to handle the amount of power that that Hellcat engine's going to put out. Besides, we want an overdrive anyway. Well, thankfully, Mopar doesn't just make that engine. They've got a bunch of other components to support it, like a transmission. Now, this is actually the 6-speed that comes from the factory in the 6-speed Challengers and Vipers, known as the TR6060. But in the aftermarket, they call it the T56 Magnum. It's got 6 forward gears, 2 overdrives, and it can handle 700 pound-feet of torque. course, Mopar sent us a bunch of stuff to get this thing working. You need a bell housing, and the bell housing bolts, this block plate, transmission mount. This is the clutch master cylinder, which sends fluid to this steel braided line here, and that sends fluid to this hydraulic release bearing. Of course, it comes with this little harness here for the transmission, because these modern transmissions have electrical components that need to tie into our main harness. With the release bearing slipped into place, we'll dab some Permatex thread locker on the bolts and get that puppy cinched down. These bolts get torqued to 20 pounds. Next up is the aluminum bell housing, which is part of the transmission kit from Mopar. It comes with all the necessary bolts, which will snug down before we torque them to 32 foot-pounds.
Then it's time to stick that sucker on a jack and get it married to that big old Hellcat engine. We'll get it lined up and install the block plate. Then get them bolted together, 32 foot-pounds, and we're good to go. We've got our 6-speed bolted to our Hellcat engine, and we're just about ready to slide this thing into our 69 Dodge Charger project. But I guess you could say we're in need of a metric shoehorn, if you will.
Well, the metric shoehorn that Tommy's talking about is this stuff right here. We got a bunch of stuff from Riley Motorsports, and the centerpiece is this tubular K-member. It's a modern design. It bolts directly in the factory location with these holes right here. It's got provisions for a sway bar, provisions for a power steering rack, which is great. Get rid of that old steering box, but most importantly is it upgrades your suspension style. Short arm, long arm, A-arms, you eliminate that radius arm, but also it's got the provisions for coilovers so you can eliminate those torsion bars. Also has these little brackets here. These bolt to our Hellcat motor, attach right here to the K-member. Of course, Riley Motorsports sent us all the supporting components as well, like these upper A-arms that come with solid rod ends. They're adjustable and they bolt in the factory location. Comes with the spindles as well, and these are custom, but they've got Mustang 2 style spindles, so you can put on just about any brake that you can imagine. With the car up on the lift, we'll yank off the wheels and tires. This old K-member was good back in the day, but it's gotta go to make room for that new stuff.
To install that K-member, we're gonna have to remove these 2 bump stops. It's no big deal. We've got 6 plug welds. We can drill them out, a little bit of hammering, we'll be good to go.
With the bump stop removed, we'll grind the rust off the frame and wipe it down with some Duplicolor grease and wax remover. Then mask off around the frame and give it 2 coats of Duplicolor acrylic enamel paint and primer. Now our new RMS K-member is ready to go in.
Okay.
Now the next thing we need to do is drill a couple of 3/8 holes on this side and the other, and that pretty much does it for the modifying on your car for this installation. Just like that, the K-member's in place.
Typically, when you do a late model engine swap into an older car like this, you take the engine and just drop it in and put it where it looks good and then start fabbing up things like engine mounts and headers and transmission cross member and things like that. Well, thankfully, Riley Motorsports has taken all the guesswork out for us. This K-member that they sent us, well, came with these engine mounts we showed you earlier. Now, it goes this way. And that's gonna put our Hellcat engine right where it's gonna live permanently. So what they did was they took the center line of the crankshaft, they put it 1.25 inches to the right of center, 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the frame rail. Exactly where an engine would have come in this car from the factory in 1969. That's good for a couple of reasons. One, it saves us from having to figure out where the engine needs to go and make engine mounts. And 2, Those measurements are what companies use to make aftermarket parts for things like headers and cross members. So the engine's out of the way. Problem now is that trans tunnel. The tunnel is just too small. The automatic and manual transmissions that came in these cars from the factory were a lot smaller than that Magnum that we're putting in here. The tunnel needs to be opened up, and also this floor brace is way too small. The arch here is too tight. There's no way we're gonna get that transmission in there, so we're gonna have to do some cutting.
We're going to start by measuring the length that we want to remove, marking where we want to make our cuts. We'll drill a few holes so that we'll have a place to start our cuts. Because our car is already painted, we're going to use a body saw instead of a torch or a plasma cutter. We don't want to make a bunch of sparks, which could damage our fresh paint. We're cutting around the floor brace, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Now before we cut this floor brace out, we want to make sure that we've got this thing nice and sturdy. This is a unibody car, and that brace does keep this thing from moving around. Normally, you take some scrap metal, cut it up, weld it in place up there, but we've got something even better. We've got this transmission cross member here that we got from American Powertrain. This is actually the one that's made for this car. Now we are going to use this one. It's going to bolt right in place here, and once we get it bolted in, it's going to keep that thing nice and tight. The cross member bolts into existing holes in the floor brace. Once tightened, we will mark for the holes on the inner part of the cross member and drill those out. With the center punch already made, we'll drill a pilot hole to establish center. Then we'll move to the step bit to take the holes the rest of the way. We'll put it back in, helping us to give added support and stability to our floor and a place to put our transmission.
With that thing all braced up, now it's time to slice this little floor brace out of the way. I'll cut it out using a reciprocating saw, making sure to cut along the edge of our previous cuts. Look at that, nice and sturdy.
Ease her on down a little bit. Keep it slow, it looks good. All right, stop right there. That's where I'd put it. Tommy, give me a hand if you would, please. What we're gonna do now is take the motor mounts and put them in place and see how far the holes are off on the block.
Looks like we're a little bit low and need to go back about 3 more inches.
Go on up.
You wanna go on back now?
Come on.
I'm trying to be easy.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, the next task at hand is going to be installing the transmission, but I've got the bell housing and the firewall touching right here, so I'm going to trim that. That way we've got a little wiggle room with that bell housing. Like before, we'll mark the section we want to cut and use our body saw to trim it away. Now we'll have the room we need.
A little bit more. All right, right there. All right, you're clear.
With the forklift out of the way and the car in the air, we can remove the cross member and bring the transmission in. Even we thought, that's a big old hole, but as you can see, that T56 Magnum filled it up.
And with it in place, we'll install a few bolts, get them just snug for now, and reinstall our cross member. Well, we got our Hell crate and transmission bolted into our '69 Dodge Charger. And even though this is just one big milestone along the way, I think we can call it mission accomplished.
Absolutely. You know, doing this conversion, it's got a lot of benefits. It's supercharged, it's fuel injection, and it also has an overdrive. So this was a great idea.
I think so.
With this old Mopar having that 707 horsepower supercharged Hemi up front, we knew we needed to make some adjustments back here in the back. So we've got some big plans for the bottom side of this car. And you know, with this car also having all that go power, well, we're gonna have to address the woe on this thing as well.
And to get all that stuff done, it's gonna take the components that you see around me here, like axles, center section, housing, brakes, and of course, the suspension. The reason we decided to ditch all of the factory stuff is because our B-body Mopar came from the factory with a leaf spring style rear suspension. That's great if you got a pickup truck, but it's really not known for being the best handling, not to mention it's heavy in weight. So we decided to go to Riley Motorsports for its Street Links kit. This is a triangulated 4-link design, which is going to provide better geometry, and that drastically improves things like traction and handling. Kit comes with everything you need to get it installed, including the control arms and the coilovers.
We'll temporarily put it into place, holding it with a couple of screws that will go in the forward mounting holes of the bump stop that I mentioned earlier. With it in place, we'll mark off the 4 holes and the perimeter of the bracket on the driver and passenger sides. Now we get to grind on some of that fresh paint. Luckily, it's black. Hey Mark, can you smell that fresh paint? Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Well, now that that's all welded in, we can move on to the next thing. That's going to be the lower control arms.
Now the next step in our kit is installing these brackets onto our leaf spring pad. Now with the Riley kit, you don't have to replace the entire housing, but we did for a couple of reasons. One, you know, we're making 707 horsepower and we didn't want anything to fail, so we wanted a nice strong unit. This is an all-new unit from Mosier Engineering. It comes welded up, ready to go. It's nice and heavy at a 1/4 inch thick, and whether you're running a stock or custom width, well, they have a 2-day turnaround, so there's no long wait. Now here on the bearing ends, we opted for an upgraded package because, well, from the factory, they have a taper bearing, and now we're running a sealed bearing. There's no adjustment, and these are leak-free. Now, as far as the axle shafts, these are 25 to 30% stronger than the stock units, so all these goodies put together are going to be nice and strong. We'll handle all the abuse that we can throw at it. Let's go ahead and get this bracket bolted up so we can move on. This step is pretty straightforward. The bracket mounts onto the pad just like the factory leaf spring. It comes with all new U-bolts, nuts, and washers, so there's no need to use any of that old rusty stuff. With everything finger tight, we can zip them down with the impact, and she's ready to slide under our charger. That ought to work. Seems to be the holdup.
I got it.
After giving Mark a hard time about taking too long, we can slap our upper links in. What we're looking for is this bar here parallel or close to the ground. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. All right.
All right, we're at right at 6 1/4 on this side.
Yep, where we're at.
All right.
So where are we at?
About 3.5 degrees positive. Oh, all right, that's it. Now that we got our rear end housing where it needs to be, we can weld those tabs to the housing and move on. Guess who drew the short stick again? Ha, it's all good, he doesn't mind. Well, now we're ready to start installing our shocks and springs. Well, we decided to go to Ride Tech for these coilovers. This is from their HQ series, and these are spec'd specifically for our application from Riley Motorsports. They are single adjustable, but they're 24-way adjustable on the rebound, so you can tune this thing to your liking. Another thing is, RideTech offers a 1,000,001 mile warranty, so you don't have to worry about these things failing. This lower coilover mount bolts to the lower control arm bracket. Then the coilover can be installed up top to our cross brace. We'll put pole jacks under the rear and lift it up until the lower coilover eyelet lines up with the mounting bracket. We'll start these by hand because these lower mounts are made of aluminum and it'd be easy to cross-thread these fine-threaded bolts. Once they're snug, we can remove the pole jacks.
While Mark's finishing buttoning up the rear on our Dodge, I'm going to tell you about the brake kit that we're going to be using. This is the Wheelwood Super Light Big Brake Kit. It comes complete with 13-inch rotors, 4-piston calipers, brake pads with a high-performance compound, and all the hardware you're going to need to install it. Now, the first thing to getting this kit on, well, we got to bolt up our backing plates. So let's go ahead and get those in. Now, when installing aftermarket brakes, sometimes it can be a pain, but with Wheelwood, they've done all the hard work so that you don't have to, making installation a breeze. They make packages for most applications, and they look good to boot. We made some good progress today. We got our rear end and the brakes all mocked up where they need to be, but we still got to pull it all back out and spray on a coat of shiny. But I may let old Mark do that.
Nope.
We're going to continue making some progress on our 69 Dodge Charger. What we're going to be working on is the dash. Now, this came out of our car and obviously it needs some attention. We're going to change the color of it, swap out some of the components, but the first thing we got to do is strip it all the way down to the bare bones so that we can spray on some color. All of this old dingy stuff has seen its better days. We need to remove all the trim and hardware, making sure to get every piece out of the way that we don't want to paint. We're about there. Most of these components are complete junk, so they're good candidates for old file 13 or the garbage can. Now, this stuff is easy to remove. It's just a bunch of speed nuts, so disassembly is a snap. Now step back and hold your breath. We're gonna blow out 50 years of grime. With it down to the bare frame, we can clean her up with a little wax and grease remover. All right, guys, the next step to our process is the most exciting, the sanding. Now, I'm kidding about all that. What we're gonna be doing is using a DA here on the flat spots, and then all those nooks and crannies that we can't really get to, we're gonna use one of these scuff pads. Now, y'all just sit back and enjoy yourself while I do all the work. Using some 220 grit paper, which has plenty of tooth, makes sanding this old frame smooth an easy job. This paint is relatively thin. Sanding through is no big deal. We're just looking for a nice smooth surface without imperfections. What the old DA couldn't get to, we'll scuff down with a scratch pad, prepping our surface for primer and paint. Next, we'll mix up some epoxy primer, pour it into the gun, and we're ready for the booth. We've got our dash all cleaned up and we're ready to start spraying. Now, what we're going to be spraying on is a couple of coats of epoxy primer first, and then follow that with some bright red paint for our interior color. Now, from the factory, these old Mopars had a soft touch paint on it. Now, we're not going to be spraying that on, but it's going to have that same kind of semi-gloss finish to it. What we're looking for here is a couple of nice even coats, making sure to cover all the cracks and crevices. Yeah, we know you won't see the backside of the dash, but heck, it sure does make it look a lot better. After a few minutes of flash time, we're ready to mix up some color. Man, that's red. There's no denying that that bright red is going to be an attention getter. And up against that black paint, it's going to look like $1,000,000. I can't wait to see it inside that mean Charger.
You know, one of the most iconic cars of the muscle car era is the '69 Dodge Charger. And its unique grille design is as hard to find as it is iconic, until now. This is the OER reproduction from Classic Industries. It's made from a high-pressure injection molding like the factory original. The set includes the center grille, outer grille surrounds with factory-style headlamp door brackets, and the headlamp doors. Like the original, it comes with emblem pin locations, so you can apply whatever trim level options you'd like.
We've got our dash support all painted, and it turned out pretty nice. Now we're going to continue painting just a little bit more, but it's not going to be on some hard parts. It's actually going to be on some soft pieces. What I'm referring to is like the dash pad and the vents. Now we've got these from Classic Industries, and they're going to be pretty much a cinch to coat. And as for this piece, it's an ugly duckling. No one repops this part, so we're going to have to refurbish it, but it's not going to be that bad. With some hot water and dish soap, we're going to be removing years of dirt, grime, and interior goo that's been applied to this poor thing. Good news in all reality is that dude didn't spend a whole lot of time prepping it to make that cheap paint stick, so it comes off pretty easy. As for these new pieces, they usually have a release coating that needs to be removed. A quick scrub will do the trick. Next, to wipe down with some acetone will make sure that we got all the contaminants. And be sure to clean your edges and seams. With everything all clean and dry, we're ready to apply some adhesion promoter. We've got a wipe and some spray that we're going to put on. After that, we can get all these goodies in the booth and spray on some color. When painting interior parts like this, it's a good idea to use some adhesion promoter. With this product, all that is required is a single even wipe down followed by a quick spray. Then we can move to the booth. We'll top off these parts with the same blood red paint that we used on our old dash frame. We're making some pretty good progress rebeautifying the dash in our old 69 Charger. Now, if you remember back when we were taking that old thing apart, it was in pretty bad shape. So we went to Classic Industries and got us several new items. Check out this new dash bezel. This thing is a work of art. We also got us a new lens for the gauges, a radio bezel. Heck, we didn't even have one of these. Knob kit, because you want all your shinies to look good. A radio, because you gotta have tunes in an old car. And a dash pad. Now they offer these in several different colors, and luckily for us, they had it in red, so all we gotta do is bolt this thing on. Now to put this thing back together, we followed the old textbook advice, and that is, just reverse the steps of disassembly for reassembly. Well, kinda. I forgot my textbook at the house, so we're just gonna wing it. These quality parts have drastically improved the appearance of our dash, and they made assembly easy as pie. And I definitely like me some pie. Well, all of our efforts did a whole lot of good. Check this thing out. Our original dash was all broken, painted, scraped up, pretty trashy. Now, this thing's like new money. Man, I like that. Where we're headed is a small town that only a select few get to call home. That is Holly Pond, Alabama. Tucked off the beaten path is one of the premier custom interior shops in the country. M&M Hot Rod Interiors has been creating award-winning interiors for 36 years, and they are the go-to shop in the South for customs and restorations. Well, good morning, Mr. Wayne. Glad to see you at work, buddy.
Good to see you, Tommy. How you doing?
Doing wonderful.
Good deal.
Looks like you're busy this morning.
Yeah, we're always busy. Trying to lay out some patterns for some Dodge Charger seats.
You made much progress at all on them?
A little bit.
A little bit?
We're getting there.
What's the first process to this thing to make some seats?
The first process that we do is we lay the hides out on the table and we kind of go over and find the imperfections and, you know, kind of like these, because you don't want to use any of that. Around the edges of the hides is a little iffy with stretch marks and stuff. You want to really get your stuff out in the middle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where the good leather's at, out in the middle. We use the edges for, you know, pulls around the bottom and stuff like that. But you want to get your inserts and stuff out of the center.
Well, what's the first step on cutting these patterns out?
Well, we just, I cut the vinyl and actually sew it up, fit it to the seat, and might take it apart and put it back together 3 or 4 times until you get it fitting just exactly right. Then you cut it apart and trace it out on the leather.
Well, I guess it's time for us to watch you do some work. Now with a steady hand and the template that he uses as a guide, Wayne traces the outline onto the leather and then cuts it out with his trusty old scissors.
Now, all we need is foam glue to that.
I'll go see Pamela.
Go see Pamela.
I was told I needed to come see you about some foam.
Okay. Well, we will get those side bands glued, and then Wayne can sew them up.
Alrighty. Is this very complicated?
No, not at all. Anybody can do it, even you. All you do is spray glue, and then you just rub it down, get all the wrinkles out of it, and then you just take your scissors and you just cut it out. All right, now these are ready for Wayne.
All right. I may be back to see you later, though.
All right.
I got your leathers all foamed up.
Good deal. Those are for later. I just needed something for you to do.
Well, in that case, what's next?
Next, we're going to lay the lines out on the seat that will actually be the insert pattern that we're about to mark on the leather and sew up. All we do is we draw it onto the seat, and then I will transfer it to the leather, get a piece of foam, and start sewing. So now what I'm doing is I'm stitching these lines that I drew on the leather, stitching it through the foam to give us that pleated look. And there we go.
I'd help you, but it looks like you got that calf rope.
Done it a time or two. I think we're a go.
So what's the next step now?
Got a French seam all the way around.
I want you to elaborate on that fancy seam.
A fancy French seam. It's what they do in all the new cars. Sew it together, and then you actually spread it apart like that, and it'll get a stitch on this side all the way around, and then we start back over there and we come back all the way around on that side.
Now the key to a good French seam is to be slow and steady. And with Wayne's experience, he makes it look easy. So how close are we getting to the end?
We're getting in the home stretch now. All we got to do is put this cover on, slap 2 buttons in it, and we'll be good to go.
I think there's probably a little more than that, but...
Yeah, a little bit. Simplify.
Simplify.
Spray a little silicone.
What for?
Makes the seat cover slide on easier.
Is it scented?
Mm-hmm.
Smells like silicone.
It smells like silicone.
Yeah.
And see how much better the seam lays once you get the French seam on it?
Yeah, it was a little
almost puckery.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because it just kind of wads up and it puckers, so.
It's nice and flat now.
Yeah, now it's nice and flat, and then when you stretch it on, it'll really lay in there and look good.
I'm supposed to see you about a button.
All right. Now, it's very complicated.
Yeah?
Now, you'll have to pay a lot of attention.
Okay, is it gonna take very long?
Not very long at all. That's it.
What?
Here's your button. Perfect button.
It is nice. Got you a couple little chigger bites.
All right, about time y'all got me some buttons up here.
Jeez. You know, it's hard to find good help.
It is, it really is.
So what are we gonna do here?
I'm gonna show you how to put these buttons in this seat.
Needles make me a little nervous.
Yeah, they do me too. But that needle goes right in that cross, and then you thread the button string in that slot. And then we tie a slip knot around the spring.
Man, would you look at that? Did you get it?
And there you go.
And I have to say, you made this look way easy, and this seat turned out great.
Well, it's great. I'm glad you like it.
Now, I know you got the other ones to do, so if you don't mind, give me a call whenever you get those finished up.
Okay, be glad to. All right, let me get you out of here where I can get back to work.
Holding the man up.
While you guys were out at the trim shop with Tommy, I've been busy working on our 69 Dodge Charger here. Last time you saw this thing, we had a big hole here in the floor. Well, we've got all new sheet metal in there, as well as some sound and thermal coating sprayed in. So this thing's practically ready for that interior as soon as it's finished. Now, I also installed the deck lid, And if you're as excited as we are to see how this car is going to look when it's finished, well, today is your day. It's time for some shiny bits and some flair right here along the back. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Now, Mark's not talking about some big old Daytona wing. He's actually referring to this bright red tail stripe. Now, we're going with red because we wanted to accent that interior that we plan to put in our car. Now, to get this stuff all started, we're going to have to clean it up a bit. We're going to have to blow the dust off because it's been sitting around for a good while, and then got to wipe it down. The first thing we need to do is blow off all the dust with some compressed air, then wipe it down with some naphtha.
Now that Tommy's got this all cleaned up, we can move on to figuring out where we need to put our stripes. Well, thankfully, the stripe kit came with the instructions telling us where we need to make the measurements, make some marks, and get our stripes in the right place. I've got a seamstress tape, and I've got some high-quality masking tape here, neither of which are going to damage our pretty black paint. First thing we need to do is pull a measurement right off this tail panel. We're making this mark at 2.5 inches from the back of the quarter panel with the quarter extension not installed. This mark gets made at 1.75 inches behind the reflector opening. We'll do the same to the other side. And tape the decal in place for mock-up. With the other side installed, we can take a measurement of the total width of the deck lid to establish center, which we'll mark on a piece of tape. All right, let's see how this looks. Get it all lined up. Yep, center. All right, Tommy, it's all you. Hard part's done.
Now, to help put this stuff on, we got some soapy solution and a squeegee. So let's go ahead and get started. With the decals out of the way, we can spray this soapy water onto the surface of the car and onto the sticky side of the stripe. This will allow us to move the decal around until we get it exactly where we want it. Then we can squeegee all the soapy water out from underneath along with any bubbles. I think that's good. We can move on. Now it's time for the deck lid piece, which gets lined up with the quarter panel pieces on the ends and the center line in the middle. More squeegeeing and this thing is ready to peel and reveal. Now whenever you're pulling this backing off, you don't want to pull it off in like this direction, because what that can do is actually pull off the decal. It's best to kind of go along with the panel. Oh yeah, and that looks great. The next thing we need to do is refurbish our taillight assemblies. Now we're going to have to spray on a little bit of paint, and we're going to do all that over here in the booth. Our plan of attack on this thing is spraying the inside here a real bright silver, and that'll help reflect all that light on the inside all the way through the lens. Now back here on the back, if you notice, it's real inconsistent as far as the color goes. What we're going to do with that is paint it a little darker silver, and when we're all said and done, this is going to look like $1,000,000. With some rubber gloves on, we'll do final prep on the housings with some Duplicolored grease and wax remover. This will get any leftover contaminants off that may prevent our paint from adhering properly. Then we can spray.
While the paint's drying on those tail lamp housings, let's take a look at the new parts we're going to use to get the back end of our charger all dialed in. We got everything here on the table from year one, and they offer muscle car restoration parts for GM, Ford, and Mopar. We got an exterior gasket set, the iconic fuel door and bezel, tail lamp lenses, everything to get all of this stuff installed, the bulbs and the hardware. But first things first, I'm going to start with these backup lights and reflectors, because they're the easy ones. The reflectors just snap right in, and the backup lamps install with a couple of screws. We'll lay the new wiring harness into place and route it where the original one was, and we can go ahead and plug in those backup lamps.
Got you a bumper.
Oh, nice. You sure that's the right one?
It should fit.
Okay. That's it. With that bumper in place, we can tighten it down and move on to some more shiny stuff, like the trim and lock cylinder.
Hey, big man, I got you some jewelry. Hope you like it.
Oh, man, you're not proposing to me, are you?
Proposing you get back to work.
These refreshed tail lamp assemblies just slide right into place from the inside of the trunk and get fastened down with some new hardware. And we just couldn't resist that fuel door.
That backside looks pretty good, don't it? Want to put your seatbelt on. We sent our Charger up to Brighton, Michigan to our buddy Mike Copeland and his shop, Arrington Performance. They've done several of these swaps on old Mopars, so we enlisted them to get all the components of that modern Hemi working with our old B-body chassis.
Mike and the guys at Arrington know what they're doing, and they killed it on this project. They've got everything hooked up from the factory, wiring harnesses, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and it's all hooked up and ready to go, as you can see by what we just did in the parking lot. You can say this thing's ready to light the fires and shred the tires anytime we want.
And speaking of tires, you guys had to have noticed that this thing's got some new kicks up under it. We went with some beefy 20s here in the rear and some slightly smaller 18s up front. To doll up our Charger, we went to Shot Performance wheels for a set of their accelerators with optional tri-bar spinners. Then we wrapped them in a set of General G-Max RS Ultra High Performance tires. That way, if we ever decide to take this thing to the track or just cruise it on the streets, we'll be prepared.
Now, since you saw it last, we've been busy doing some of that tedious stuff like trim, glass, and we even got the doors hung, but we don't want to waste your time with all of that. We do want to show you something else, though.
That would be the exhaust. We brought in Richard, our buddy with MagnaFlow. Man, you brought us a bunch of goodies. You got a plan of attack on this car?
Well, it's exhaust, so I'm starting at some headers and finishing at a bumper. Apart from that, though, I've got some pieces to go in between. Obviously, we got the Hellcat motor, so some 3-inch pipe to support the power. I got some V-band clamps so that we can get there and do some service if you ever have to pull a transmission or anything else. Want to make sure the system comes apart. We're going to wrap up with some tips. But as you can see, I did bring 2 sets of mufflers because when I got the description for the car, I wasn't sure if you wanted something that's going to be loud all the time or something that gave you a little cruise and comfort to match the style. And when you get on that pedal, you can hear the full exhaust with a little bit larger muffler.
Cool. Well, where do you want to get started at?
Probably grab some pipe and get behind those headers. A few people who see me work before and they say, man, you spend a lot of time in the front. And really that comes from the fact that everything you do at the front of the exhaust system is amplified, whether positive or negative, towards the rear. If you make a 1/16 of an inch error in the front, whether that's the direction of the pipe or an overbend, imagine over 8 feet, that could be easily become a 1/2 inch error. Combine that with, another 6 bends on each tube, you can end up hard into a suspension component or interfere with the cycling of the rear end. So spend your time in the front. If there's nothing else I could suggest when building that system is make sure that your front pipes are definitely bolted up and everything's tight. You don't have a header that's loose because that slight bit of movement will amplify any problems behind that. With all my cuts on the pipe done, I just have to make a couple of marks, take it back to the bench, and finish the weld. So basically what we've done with the levels is determine that the exhaust system is not only flat side to side, but running in the same parallel as the actual body. This means the exhaust looks like it's nice and neatly tucked, and as a dual has the right kind of symmetry from left and right. So with everything lined up, I can lock in the tacks and we're ready to move back from here. I like to spend the time to make sure everything's level and even. You want to make sure that when you see the exhaust, in this case, it's going to protrude underneath the visual line of the car, that it looks like it's supposed to be there. No sun and air gaps. We want to make sure there's enough there for heat resistance and heat transference, but at the same time, it should run parallel with the body line. With my pieces cut, I'm going to take them back to the car and fit them to the X-pipe. This is where I'm going to make sure I have the orientation correct. I'll grab the MIG, verify that the level's correct, and tack them in place. It's important to go ahead and get them tacked so the orientation doesn't change, but I will go back to the bench and finish it up with a TIG weld.
Now you can very well finish everything with the MIG, but I like to take it back to the bench and do a nice TIG weld. Not only does it have a better finish, but if you've got the time, the equipment, and a little bit of know-how, it's definitely worth the extra efforts. We've just got to work back from our middle brake point through the mufflers, over the axle, and obviously to the tailpipes. The fun part is here, and this is where we'll get the mufflers installed, and we'll get both Mark and Tommy out here to kind of decide on where the character of the car goes. A little louder, a little more conservative, but for the most part, we're on the home stretch.
Richard's done an amazing job on our exhaust, and he's got it just about here to the rear axle.
So all we need to do now is put some turn downs on it. We're ready to go, right, Rich?
I hope not.
Now, we brought some 18-inch ones to put in here, and I figured that would be a tighter fit to what you did for the build on the car. But just in case, I got some 14s. They're a little shorter and a little louder, so figured let's put them both on there and let you guys pick it out.
So you want to put the car down and fire it up?
You got it.
Let's do it. Hey, the 14s are going to sound better. You watch.
Don't sound too bad.
No, that's how it should sound. Nice, deep, kind of muscly tone to it.
I like that throaty sound it's got to it. But I know Slim's going to want to put them shorter ones on there.
I want to hear the louder ones.
Yeah, that definitely sounds louder for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely deeper, and when he gets on that throttle, it'll rap a little louder.
Told you it was going to sound better.
Well, it sounds different. I don't know if I'd say better.
Well, I think this sounds right for this car. It's loud, it's aggressive.
What do you think?
I'm still going to go with my original choice. If you're definitely looking at a road cruiser, it's going to have almost the same volume at wide open, but you'll have a lot more comfort inside when you're cruising.
Well, I'm going to go off of you then. My vote's for you.
I'm outnumbered. Let's swap them.
At MagnaFlow, quality's premier. From the 80s when we originally started the company, it's what differentiated us from the others that were in the industry. We chose a stainless steel component to be our primary piece to avoid the corrosion. On top of that, we sought out the best methodology for welding. What started out as hand welding moved to CNC and robotic welding. What required manufacturing for tubing, we brought in-house. The more things we can control, the better the finished product became. What our job was is to make it better. And that's what we've done, is try to put all the resources together to make a part that's a worry-free experience for the owners today.
Dang, fella, it looks like you got this thing figured out.
Yeah, just about.
It looks nice.
Yeah, we pretty much went straight up and got all the 3-inch in that we were looking for, kept it tight and tucked, True X, the big 18-inch muffler, over the axle, and just wrapped up the tips.
Well, I guess you want to hear this thing for sure, don't you?
Oh yeah, finished stuff is always the best.
Well, let's let it down, see what it sounds like.
Now, generally speaking, you don't need to see the rest of the car to know what this thing came out of. This is the grille and headlight assembly for our 69 Charger. This is actually the one that we pulled out. Now, we didn't fix it up because we knew most of this stuff was going to need to be replaced at some point. The support brace is damaged and rusty. The grille, it's all dry rotted and cracked and damaged beyond repair. And the trim, well, it's seen better days.
So we went to Classic Industries for an all-new grille. It comes painted, ready to install. It has your center grille, both left and right extensions, and both headlight doors. Now all these cool parts install into a headlight and grille bracket support. Ours had been sucker punched years ago and was in really bad shape, and it had to be replaced. So I picked up a new one, sprayed on some black paint, and it's ready to go. Now with our old grille, we're gonna have to reuse some of the mechanicals in it, so it's time for us to tear it apart and get dirty.
Now we're gonna retain some of this and throw the rest of it away, but we need to get it all torn down, get it cleaned up. Some of these pieces are not remanufactured and hard to find, so we want to take our time and make sure we don't damage any of them in the process of disassembly. All right, well, that's it. We got all the parts we needed to get off of here to make a trip to the blaster. We'll get these parts blasted, get a coat of paint on them.
We've got all of our parts cleaned up and we're ready to start spraying them. The first thing we're gonna do is apply some Duplicolor self-etching primer. And then after that, we're gonna spray on some color. We'll use cast coat aluminum on the headlight buckets and switch to our cast coat for the headlight cover actuator rods. Then I'll use some semi-gloss black on the actuator support bracket. Hey Hoss, I got these parts all detailed out and they're dry and ready for you.
They look good, thank you. Just in time, because I need these buckets.
Well, you get busy.
All right, thanks. We'll start by installing the headlight buckets that Tommy painted, as well as the new adjuster hardware, followed by the headlights and the bezels to tighten them down. The new Charger emblem goes on next and we'll secure it with some screws. Now we can slide the grille into the support and bolt it together using the supplied hardware we got from Classic Industries. I'll flip the headlamp support over and start putting our headlight assembly together, starting with the headlight door actuator rod, followed by the actuator mounted bracket. We're going to replace the old vacuum-driven actuators with these electric ones. They bolt right into the factory location and are easy to install. Now with all this fresh paint, we want to make sure we take it nice and easy to get it right the first time. We want to get all the bolts started by hand before we tighten any of them for good. All right, well, we got the grille all finished and installed. Everything's tight. Need to move on to the bumper now. We've got original bumper brackets all cleaned up and painted black. Just need to get them installed.
You handling it all right over there, boss?
Yeah, just about. A lot in the way, though.
That's good enough. We're gonna leave these bolts a little loose so that we can make some adjustments before we tighten them down for the final time.
Now it's time for the shiny stuff. Just look at that reflection. Amazing what just a few pieces you put on does.
You ain't kidding. Once we got all the bumper bolts installed by hand, we can make our adjustments and lock it down. Careful, this is shiny.
I see that. Now it's time for the lower valance. We'll get the center bolted in loosely. Just like the grille support, we want to install all the bolts before we tighten them down.
You ain't in a bind, are you? There it is.
Next, we can get the bumperettes installed and they just bolt right in those factory holes. That looks good.
Well, Mr. Mark, you definitely do some pretty good work, and it looks like I'm going to have to be doing some work on this hood.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but now it looks like a 69 Charger, and that's the important part. I mean, look how far it's come from just what we've done today.
Yeah, with a little bit of paint, a few pieces of glass, and some interior, we're going to be riding in style.
Oh, I'm ready.
Now, we've been working on our 700 horsepower 69 Charger for quite some time, and it's finally starting to take some shape. Now, up here, we're missing a piece that's pretty obvious to see, and we're going to address that today.
But that's not the only thing we've got on our plate. I got to get in this interior because we really haven't done much yet. We put the seats in because we did a big smoky burnout in the parking lot a while back, but I got to get those out of the way because we have a bunch more stuff that needs to go in first.
We wanted to hold off on painting our hood because with us installing that Hellcat power plant, we weren't 100%, everything was going to be happy once we closed it. Turns out, we're all good and we can move forward. Now, I've blocked this thing a few times and it's got a couple of coats of some polyester primer. I run into a little bit of a snag. Right here on this recess, it had a little bit of a bobble in it, so I had to spot prime it. Now it's time for us to do what everybody enjoys, a little bit of sanding. We're gonna apply some guide coat. This isn't necessary, but it helps as a visual aid. On a panel like this, you don't want to apply an extreme amount of pressure because you don't want to distort the panel that you're trying to sand flat. Just keep sanding it in a crisscross pattern and don't stay in one spot too long. Oh yeah, that feels good. Here we're not trying to remove a bunch of material, we're just trying to smooth out the overspray from our previous spot prime. 80 grit paper allows you to shape up that panel relatively quickly, but the problem is that the scratches it leaves behind are a little bit too coarse. So what you need to do is take some 180 or 220 and follow it up, and if everything checks out when you sand that panel, you can prime it for the last time. After another round of this guide coat, those deep scratches are obvious. I'm using the same technique with 180 grit paper. You can usually tell how long a man's been doing bodywork by how much he enjoys sanding. Most of them young whippersnappers, they'll tell you, oh, I love sanding. Bodywork is so awesome. And it's like, yep, you ain't been doing it long enough if you still enjoy it. After finally getting it smoothed out, it gets rubbed down with an air hose and a dry cloth. The primer we're going to be spraying on now is a 2K urethane primer. Now what we were just scratching on out there is a polyester primer. You don't want to spray paint directly over top of polyester because it's too porous. So after a couple of coats of this and it drying, well, we can sand it down and splash on some of that color. Nothing fancy here, we just got to get the material on there and let it dry. Now with our first coat of base, we're not trying to cover the surface 100%, just majority of the panel. Well, we got our first coat of color on it and it looks pretty good. We're going to be applying 2, maybe 3 coats total. We're just looking for this thing to be up to color. Now with black, it's pretty much straightforward, and 50 to 60% overlap usually get the job done. The material we're using is pretty good stuff, but if you're using something a little more economy based, be prepared to apply more coats to get the same amount of coverage. I got the hood tacked off, now we're ready to start spraying on some of that shiny stuff. Now with our clear coat, we're gonna add about a pound of pressure here at the gun because it's thicker than the base. We're gonna spray on 3 coats, maybe 4, so let's go ahead and get started. The application process is basically the same as your base coat here, but your flash time is a bit longer. Don't try to pile it all on in one heavy coat. A few medium to wet coats is always best. I have to say, this thing turned out killer.
It's beautiful, and I'm glad you did all that sanding instead of me, because I didn't want to do all that. But with all the panels on the car, I can definitely say we picked the right color.
You were right.
Well, we said we were going to be jumping on the interior of our '69 Dodge Charger, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start with this headliner. Now, you folks may remember Kiwi from Kiwi Classics and Customs. He's helped us on the show several times before, and actually on a headliner just recently on our '72 Chevelle.
Chevelle, yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure, always fun here.
What's the first thing we need to do? Wait, I remember. Bows, right?
Bows, yep. Got to get the bows in, got to get these little tubes that they stitch in the headlining trimmed to the right length and start gluing.
Cool. I'll let you do that. I'm gonna go do some installation.
All right. Gently slide the bows in, get them centered, which is important, which is really just feeling that it's centered. And when you do take the bows out of the vehicle, when you start this project, the important thing is to number them so you get them back in the right place. Because there's 6 of them in this car and all 6 are different. So very important to get them back in the right spots or it's never going to look any good. Number 4.
Well, while Kiwi's getting that headliner ready, I've been working on getting this boom mat installed here on the roof. I got a couple of pieces trimmed to fit. Already got a couple of other pieces installed. You just have to peel the backing off, get it stuck into place, roll it down flat. This boom mat helps dampen sound and reduce temperatures.
On our Charger, there's some pieces that go around the headliner and around the window to trim it out. And from the factory, they come black. But what we're wanting to do is add kind of a custom touch. Paint these pieces red to match all that interior. We're using the leftover interior paint that we used on our dash a while back. It takes a few coats to cover that black, but that red is really gonna make that interior pop.
The headliner's already laid out. Now we're just going to spray the adhesive on the inside of the car. Okay, time to get some glue on the headliner itself. This is where it's great working on American cars and not some little tiny European thing that I don't fit in. Okay, we've got a centre line marked here on the headliner itself, a little wee centre line marked on the roof of the car which we'd previously measured. Really important to get those in the right location. So once you get the middle right, you can just work out to the edges, front and back and the sides. Got some wrinkles up here, I'm not sure whether you can see, but as we pull the tension in here, they will disappear. But don't be scared to put your back into it, you really do have to get some tension on them. Because once the sun hits them outside, they're going to loosen up.
Looks like I got here just in time.
Thanks, man.
Looks like you're making some pretty good progress.
Yeah, it's coming together nice. It's nice colour coded. Oh, it's working now that I'm doing it. That's a given. Beautiful. Little tip when you're putting headliners in a car, put the screws for your mirrors and your sun visors, put them in first. Sounds a little backwards. When you put them in, you can feel them. Hopefully the viewers can see them. They're just poking down a little bit here. Lets you know where they are rather than trying to find a hole. So you just, and then you can just unscrew them and you know exactly where it goes. Ah, check it's working. Oh, good grief, I just saw Tommy.
So this isn't your first one?
Not my first one.
And you did a good job, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty.
It is pretty. You know, I have to say, though, it has been a pleasure working with you, but I know how Mark feels now. Working with somebody with an accent from the South.
Well, yeah, it's fairly deep south, yeah.
Today we're back on our 69 Charger and we're going to be addressing the flooring in this thing. Now the install we're going to be doing isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill carpet install.
Well, what Tommy means by that is that we modified our floor quite a bit. A while back we decided to go with that Hellcat drivetrain and a 6-speed manual gearbox. And to get those to fit, we had to cut some stuff out, from the firewall all the way back to that rear seat. Now that includes the transmission tunnel and that drive shaft hump. So you can't just take a carpet out of a box that you'd order from a catalog and slap it in here. It's not going to fit. So we need to do something custom.
So we got ourselves a hired gun. This is Gil Vigil with Speed and Design Hot Rod Interiors. Speed and Design is one of the leading hot rod interior shops in the country. Gil started doing upholstery on his own vehicles, then slowly started working on friends' cars, which led him to start Speed and Design Hot Rod Interiors. They specialize in traditional and streamlined custom upholstery on high-end hot rods, including several award-winning vehicles. Now it's easy to see that these guys have it figured out in the custom world, so what's your plan for our car?
I think what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take the replacement carpet that you've already purchased. We're going to go ahead and cut that right down the middle, and we'll figure out how to incorporate that with the new pattern that we make for your center console.
Well, how do you want to get started?
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll lay that carpet in there and figure out the center.
Cool.
While Tommy was taking out the shifter, I went ahead and made the mark in the center here so I can cut out the two pieces and lay them out so we can start fabricating our custom transmission tunnel.
He starts by laying a piece of clear, sticky plastic over our custom transmission tunnel to make sure he has the right shape. Using a marker, he traces the outline of the tunnel to make his template. Once that's all done, you can simply cut it out.
Now that I've made my pattern, I'm going to go ahead and transfer it onto this carpet. I'm going to go ahead and make my mark an inch or so bigger to give me some allowance for that transmission tunnel.
After the first piece is cut, it's over to the car to check the fit. Once he gets it into place, he will trim off the excess. And with a little quality time with the old scissors, he'll get it just right.
Now that we've dialed in this piece, we'll repeat the process on this panel and this panel. What we're doing now is sewing on this piece of leather to dress up the edge of this raw carpet.
Once the leather is sewn on, you'll trim off the selvage.
What we're gonna do now is glue this edge, fold this over, take another trip to the sewing machine, and sew here. What we want to do is make sure this edge stays nice, clean, and consistent. Now that we've sewn this piece up, we can go ahead and glue it in and continue the process with the rest of these panels.
We got our tunnel finished up. Now it's time to start installing the left and right side. What's next?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and trim this up, bind the edge, glue it in for the final install.
Well, sounds like all we need next is some seal plates and kick panels. I'll go grab those.
All right, time to sew.
He will repeat the same process with the driver and passenger side carpet as he did with our transmission tunnel pieces. This type of carpet install will take a bit of time to complete, but it's necessary to accommodate our modified floor. This kind of install is very popular in the hot rod world, and after seeing the finished product, you could say it's time well spent. Gill's finished up on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and slap in the kick panel and the seal plate. Man, yeah, that looks nice. Now with all the hard work done, dash, headliner, and carpet, now it's time for us to install the door panels and front and rear seats. Now a few of you guys out there may be questioning this color choice that we went with, this bright blood red. But I'm here to tell you, when we're all said and done against this black beautiful paint, it's gonna knock your socks off.
Now I know Tommy makes it sound like we don't have that much left to do on that interior, and that's partly true. But there's a whole lot of small pieces that need to go into something like this to make it look just right. What it boils down to is the details. If we want the quality of the interior to match the exterior, it's going to take a whole lot of new pieces. So we went to year one. Well, they had everything we needed to get this thing dialed in, like these armrest pads and bases for the front and rear, which you can't really restore. Or you got some things that you could restore, like these window cranks, but it just doesn't make sense to do it when you can buy these new. We've got all the hardware and the other small parts to get this thing where we need it to be. Of course, the door panels front and rear. But we're going to work on this thing from the rear, moving toward the front. We're going to start with the package tray. There isn't much to this piece. It simply slides into place. Now we're going to drop in our back seat board that hangs from the factory hooks, followed by our edge trim. Then finally, the killer red interior side panel. Quality parts like these we got from year one make restoring the interior on our Charger a fun day in the shop, because installation is a snap and the eye appeal is plentiful. They also offer these components in several different colors to match your ride's factory specs. The bright work on this old Mopar really adds a bit of class to this interior, plus it's hard to go wrong with some chrome. We have to trim out a couple holes for the armrest and bezel that will attach with the new hardware. Man, that looks good. I'm gonna go get those uppers.
Nothing complicated about this piece. Just a couple of clips and one screw to hold it in place. From the factory, this upper panel is foam padded. We wanted a more refined look, so adding the new leather definitely did the trick.
Man, that looks good. Now it's time to move on to the front.
Mark and I finished putting on the front door panels and accessories that we got from year one, getting it one step closer to installing the reupholstered seats. Now it's time for us to install our Charger logo. For you Mopar experts out there, you've probably noticed that our upper door panels aren't chalk mark correct. That's because we had M&M hot rod interior, recover them in leather to match our seats. Now all we have to do is pop it into place. Need some help?
Maybe. You push on that side?
Yeah. I'm close, ain't but like an inch off.
Mine's it. That's it.
Looks pretty good.
It does. Right back there.
Got it.
While Tommy's getting those front seats installed, I wanted to show you all this rubber here. We got this from Metro Molded Parts, and we've already installed some on the car as we were building it. They gave us everything we needed from front to back to get everything sealed up right and quiet when you close it, like bumpers for the trunk and the hood. We've got the trunk seal here and these pedal pads, which is really all we need to get that interior done. Let's get these on there.
We're waiting on you, boss.
I got a little bit left here. I'll be done. And with this little thing, we can declare victory.
From where you guys are sitting, you're probably thinking that our Charger has plenty of shine on it. Well, this old thing's kind of developed a few bumps and bruises and even a few scratches from us assembling it. Now with black cars, they're notorious for having hologram scratches. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Right here on the top of this fender, you can see those micro scratches. To get these things out, it takes a little bit of love, and we brought us in a friend to help us out. So I want you guys to meet Michael Pena. He's a master detailer, and you might even recognize this guy from our trip whenever we went up to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, I know you're quite the skilled hand whenever it comes to shining these cars up. What's the first step to getting this car ready?
First step, we have to assess the car, Tommy. I know it's fresh paint and you guys built the car, so I need to ensure I have the correct tools to get this car show ready.
Now, we've cut and buffed this car and we quit sanding about 2,000 grit.
The car looks great. Definitely, my recommendation is a compounding step, a polishing step, and then a final jeweling will make this car absolutely ready for the show.
So there's nothing too serious at all?
Nothing too serious.
Well, I guess that buffer doesn't require 4 hands, so I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you. The first step I'm going to do is a compounding step. That removes the heavy imperfections, the sanding scratches, things that are in the paint that are not able to be quickly removed with the DA. My next step is I've switched machines. I've got the smoother surface beginning to come about. And so to further enhance the paint, I'm going to use a dual action polisher with a medium pad and my Cut Max compound to further refine the finish. In the industry, it's accepted to work on smaller portions of the panel when you are working with imperfections, especially types of sanding scratches or building a vehicle. You want to ensure that your results are uniform. And so I choose a smaller work area, probably like a 1x1, or in the industry, we say it's 3x3. It's 3 pads by 3 pads. And so that is our work area. Once I'm happy with those results, then I can move on to the next step and the next part of the panel and obtain good results. I love what I do. I love meeting cool people, doing cool stuff, showing my Sonex shine throughout the United States, and then I even get to go to Brazil and do some training classes down there as well. Now I've changed it up a little bit. I'm using my light polisher with a soft pad on the jeweling machine, and you will see incrementally that the reflection and luster of the paint just starts coming up, and it's truly a jeweling effect, and this car will look like a mirror. I love the finished result as I'm progressing through the stages of the detail. The finished result, when I step back and say, wow, that is something that I had a hand in, pun intended, of that final result, it is just, that's my payoff. Well, I just wanted you to see when you use professional products and you match that with professional techniques, you can obtain professional results.
Well, you did one heck of a job, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Now get your fingers off my paint.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Hey y'all, welcome to Detroit Muscle. We've been busy in the shop working some late hours, so I'm chasing me some R&R. If you're into American muscle, pistol grip 4-speeds, man, some treasure hunting, you're gonna like what we're doing today.
This is the 39th Mopar Nationals, held at National Trail Raceway. It's like someone took a giant bag of Skittles and scattered them all over their 207-acre site.
It's kind of like a Woodstock for cars. I mean, there's a little bit of everything here.
The drag racing, the swap meet, all the people that we meet.
It's a closer-knit brotherhood.
The Americans are more crazy than ours that love Mopar.
Like most outrageous events, the Mopar Nationals started from humble beginnings. And with the Nats being such a premier show, we knew it'd be a great place for us to show off all of our hard work. To say we were amazed by the reaction to the car would be an understatement.
It's an incredible car because in a 69 Charger is the best Charger.
The engine is something unreal.
I think the car is phenomenal because it's an ideal blend of old and new. A lot of us that buy muscle cars, they're too much of a beast to really drive a lot or far distances. This is one I could hop in, drive 1,000 miles, have a great day.
We're here at the Super Mopar Cruise, and this is what it's all about. All those long hours we were putting in, having a ride that's finally finished, we're gonna stretch its legs. I got a good friend of mine. Hope y'all like the ride as much as I do. Riding in this one, what do you think about it?
Well, I'm starting to get more interested in this modern application of drivetrain to body. A lot of guys have been doing this for quite some time now, but this car here, you get the comfort of air conditioning and a nice stereo, a stupid amount of horsepower, and good looks to go with it, so you get it all.
I appreciate all those compliments you gave about me, but we're supposed to be talking about the car.
Yeah, right. And you know, the ride on this car is not bad.
We've upgraded the suspension on the front, back. It's got big, massive brakes on it. Is this stuff what you have to have? No, but it sure does make it a lot of fun.
That just came out. That wasn't supposed to happen.
We're gonna see what second gear feels like. You know, that was 1, 2, and 3, and there's still 4, 5, and 6 to go.
Yeah. How fast will this go? About 300 miles an hour?
No, that's if you let the wings down.
Okay.
See, that's what's funny. No, sir, officer, I wasn't exceeding the speed limit. I just got to it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Now, I know you have a Hellcat and some of these older cars. With weaving the two together, are people onto something?
I think so. Like I said, the ability to cruise, make trips, etc. in a car like this in comfort makes a big difference. Like I said, a lot of guys are getting on up in their years now and they don't want to sweat on those old vinyl seats anymore, and you can take a car like this and drive this thing to the West Coast if you wanted to.
Yeah. You know, something about them Hellcat engines and that squall, if you will.
That whine.
Woo! You gonna let me borrow your Hellcat one weekend?
Not the way you drive. It's amazing how smooth this thing is. What are you doing, 65? 70?
That's what I'm gonna tell you.
These Hellcat engines got such a nice flat pull to them. It makes it a lot of fun to drive and ride in. And like I said, you can't deny the fact that this car's got some of the best lines of any muscle car, era car, or for that matter, any car.
Yeah, you know, you could probably argue that a 69 Charger could be the prettiest Mopar ever.
I would say that would be a semi-accurate statement.
He must have another favorite then.
70 Challenger.
With the sun setting, we pulled into the town of Buckeye Lake, and to our surprise, the road was lined on both sides with Mopar lovers. Every 100 feet, somebody is wetting down the street, hoping for a burnout. It felt a little like Mardi Gras. Of course, we obliged them. Now with that validation, we can go to the auction in Dallas with confidence we have a great ride.
We're here at Mecum Auctions in Dallas, and there's plenty of eye candy laying around this joint. We're also looking for new builds, so we're gonna see what we can come up with.
Sure, this is a good place to buy a car, but it's also a good place to sell one. So we brought along our 1969 Dodge Charger here, you know, to free up some capital. Besides, you can't keep them all. So here shortly, you're gonna see this thing cross the block and find itself a new owner. Till then, I'm gonna go check this place out. Mecum is a lot more than just hundreds of cars and trucks for sale. It's a full-on automotive hurricane, and it takes a lot of hard work to make it the big top attraction it has become.
Our good friend and car collector Tim Welding had this to say about the whole auction experience, whether it be as a seller or a buyer.
If you go to auctions, you're going to find that sometimes you walk in, it's just electric. Generally, when you've got a great collection of cars coming through, that energy's in the room, and people tend to get excited when that's happening. Not only the people who are watching who are not buying, but even the crowd even gets into it. So as a buyer, sometimes you can hear that revving up, and you'll put your hand up another time or two, and that keeps that energy going.
So far, Mopars at Mecum Dallas have been very strong, but when you start dealing in restomod cars, everything changes, because essentially they're all one of a kind. Late 60s, early 70s Dodge Chargers in particular, quite high quantity here. So there is some Mopar buzz, but when it comes to restomods, you just never know what they're going to do.
So I think the car will probably go for 125, maybe a little more. It's hard to say on the restomods, but they are developing so much energy these days. They're outdoing a lot of these the correct restored cars like I like. I actually would not mind owning a restomod of that quality.
After putting my finger on the pulse of just the way the car looks, the presentation, certainly the Hellcat engine is the star of it, but even the subtle things such as the wheel and tire treatment, the paint combinations, I'm going to stick my neck on predict we're going to see a six-figure plus bid on this car.
All right, all has been said and all the work on the car has been done, and we're backstage at Mecum Auctions Dallas as our Charger is just minutes away from crossing the auction block.
I don't know about you, but I'm both nervous and excited because this build has taken almost 3 years. Well, here we are now. We're going to see what it brings. I'll be proud to have that in my garage, you know what I'm saying?
We're amazed at the buzz that is surrounding our Mopar as it makes its way through the staging lanes. One final wipe down, and our Hellcat Charger was creeping its way toward the old auction block.
Our Charger's just about ready to hit the block. Mark's up there with the guys in the booth, and I'm going to be walking around the floor. And I have to say, I'm about as nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
All right, here comes the 69 Charger Resto Mod. And this build kind of took a little bit different turn than you had originally thought it might, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, so like I said, we made a list of everything we wanted, but what we didn't have was that one detail of which engine was going to be under the hood. We actually planned on doing a full restoration on this car, and we ended up finally going with the 707 horsepower Hellcat, and I think it was the right choice.
I'd say that's a good call, huh, John?
Well, I have to confess, guys, I was lucky enough to go down on the set, the stage at the shop, and meet with these guys and look at the project in its early stages. And we had discussions about, they asked me, what do you think could be a good direction to go? And I just threw it out there, never thinking in a million years that it would ever happen, but it certainly did. The Hellcat engine, 707 horsepower, contemporary Hemi engine, 6-speed manual transmission, full restomod treatment. Hang on to your hat, Mark, my friend. We're at $160,000.
Still climbing.
I don't know what to say. That's more than I anticipated. So I love it.
You guys checked all the right boxes. JK and I looked at this car. This is the first time I really have seen it this week, and the wheel package is on the money. The interior treatment, the vinyl top, everything. We're over $200,000.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I got $200,000 bid. Yep. 210 if anyone wants to do that. What do you want to do back there, Travis? What do you get 205 before you go? 205,000. Iron David gets 200, 205,000, 1.5.
I'm gonna get it.
Big congratulations, Mark. You and Tommy knocked it out of the ballpark. The quality, the selection, the stance, everything. There's your partner, Tommy, right there. Man, did it pay off. $200,000, my friend.
Yes, he looks happy. I'm happy. I don't know what to say.
I think you might call that speechless.
Yeah.
It's hard to put into words just how amazing that moment was. But as we look at the winner, Thomas Patterson, signing for the Charger, it's gratifying to see all that hard work and using all the best parts paid off big time. And that gavel price says it all. Tommy caught up with the new owner.
Well, guys, I'm here with Thomas, the high bidder on our car. I have to ask you a couple questions. What made you really want this thing?
The car looks brand new, and that Hellcat motor in it was awesome. I mean, it's a beautiful, put-together car.
Another question would be, what's your plans for this thing?
I'm going to drive it. I mean, really? I mean, who would not want to drive that car?
Well, we did it. The car's complete, and we sent it across the block, no reserve, and it paid off big time. $200,000. I can't believe it. That yellow sticker never looked so good.
I know, man, but y'all know what that means now. Well, we got a little bit of money in our pocket. We still got some time, so it's time for us to go find us another project. What do you think?
Yeah, I got my eye on something. Come here, I want to show you.
I hope it's not a Mustang.
It's an El Camino.